Hey, don't be so open with these bribes. Don't be so open with these bribes.
Some things I don't want. We gotta get this show on the road. I need to talk. Number C. I need to talk with A and B. Put on there. Go ahead and put Jack Wallace on there.
Can't tell if it's $1 or $100, right?
This meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise to the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Do we have any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
I've got a few.
All right, Alderman Demas.
Under Mayor's Business, item A to consent.
All right. The proposed revision from Alderman Demas is to place item 9A, the approval of the 2% funds for fiscal year 2012, or approval for the budget for OCEDA's 2% funds for fiscal year 2012 on the consent agenda as presented. Alderman Demas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that measure's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under Mayor's Business, item B to consent.
All right. A proposed revision is to place item 9B, budget proposal for the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant as presented by the Healthy Starkville Committee, Chairperson Allison Carges, as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under Department Business Airport, item 1 to consent.
Proposed revision is to place the approval of entering into an agreement with Clearwater Consultants for professional services for multiple and various projects for George M. Bryan Airfield as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under Airport, item 2 to consent.
All right, Alderman Demas's proposed revision is to place the request for approval to issue work authorization number 11-01 for professional services regarding FAA 2011 AIP with respect to George M. Bryan Airfield on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman
Under
Demas.
Airport, item 3 to consent.
Alderman Demas has proposed revising the agenda to place the approval to issue work authorization number 11-02 for professional services regarding FAA 2011 AIP with respect to George M. Bryan Airfield as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under Office of the City Clerk, item 1 to consent.
All right.
We can't do that one.
No.
That's except Fire Department.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Alderman Demas has proposed placing the request for approval of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except the Fire Department as of October 13th, 2011 on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Okay. Under Personnel, item 2 to consent.
All right. Alderman Demas has proposed revising the agenda to place personnel item number 2, a request for advertisement to fill a vacant position of maintenance worker 1 in the water division of the Public Services Department as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Demas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under Personnel, item 3 to consent.
All right, Alderman Demas has proposed revising the agenda to place the request for advertisement to fill a vacant position of maintenance worker 1 in the street department as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Then item 4, under personnel to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 4 under personnel, the request for advertisement to fill a vacant position of laborer in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department to the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you
I
have
have no
further?
further revisions.
Alderman Perkins.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, with regard to all the matters on the electric department and with regard to items 5, 6, and 7, I'd like for those matters to come up after executive session, please, for consideration.
All right, so Alderman Perkins has proposed revising the agenda, reordering items that are currently items 11E1 and 2. Those are the 2 electric department items. And,
E1, 2, 3, and 4.
oh, all 4, excuse me.
sir. All 4.
Items E1 through 4, that's all of the electric department items.
And personnel is 5, 6, and 7.
And personnel 5 through 7 to the end of the agenda after executive session. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir. Alderman Perkins, yes, sir.
Or, excuse me, Alderman Perkins. All right, hold on one second. Just want to make sure I've got it.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak to Ms. Sproul at a break, please.
All right. Is there any objection to that proposed revision? That is moving those items under electric department personnel to the end of the agenda after executive session. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the agenda has been revised. Any further proposed revisions? Do we have
Mr.
any?
Mayor, Mr. Jack Wallace, Mr. Wallace, your matter has been put on the consent agenda, and certainly you've been coming for years, and we appreciate you, and you can speak to us you like. You still want to speak to us tonight?
You, sir.
Well, I'll just yield to you, Mr. Wallace. Thank you for being here.
If you're short of time, I can certainly make myself
We'll hear from
scarce.
Mr. Mayor, we'll hear from him. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. All right, any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Alderman Carver.
I'd like to leave it on consent, but board business A, it was the not to exceed amount of 2,500. Is that per person or is that?
No, that's totally. Is that per person?
8,
That's the board
10A.
Board business A with the travel
Is it
No,
2,500?
that's 2,500 total,
per person?
total.
Okay, well, just the figures then were throwing me off.
Is that per person? Per person.
Yeah, 2,500 per person.
Okay. Can we just get it listed as per person and leave it on consent?
Okay.
Sure. Alderman Carver has proposed revising the agenda to make sure that item 10A, which is the consideration of approval for travel of the Board of Alderman members to the National League of Cities Conference to be held November 8th through 13th, 2011, Phoenix, Arizona, with a travel advance authorized in an amount not to exceed $2,500 per person. Is there any objection to that? Alderman Carver, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Any objection? Any objection?
Mr. Mayor, and just to be clear for the audience there, it says travel of the Board of Alderman, just certain members of the Board of Alderman, not the whole board.
Right.
Your mayor and board.
Yeah, actually, it will be me, Alderman Parker, and Alderman Vaughn will be the 3 members attending that conference. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter has been revised and will remain on the consent agenda. Do we have further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to get a report from the Budget Committee.
All right, so would you like to add that as item F under board business?
Yes, sir.
All right, Alderman Perkins has proposed revising the agenda to add an item F under Roman numeral 10, board business, report from the Budget Committee. Any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter has been placed on the agenda.
Mayor, do we need to add back for the fire department claim? Because there's actually no agenda item
We probably don't have fire department claims tonight.
Because this is the last claims for September for the last year, we will have fire department claims in here.
We do have them.
We do, right.
do.
So are they included in the overall claims docket?
They're included in the overall claim. No, it should be a separate.
It is separate.
It's a separate.
It's not on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Well, we can add that one to the agenda.
Okay.
Because it's a separate claim.
All right, so we would add number 3 under item 11C, Office of the City Clerk. And agenda item 3 would be consideration of the fire department claims docket. Alderman Parker, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been added to the agenda. Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Are there any further proposed revisions to the agenda from the members of the board? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you, for your approval,
Can we get to the sound?
Yeah, can we?
Take a time out.
yeah, we'll just pause for a second in our chairs.
It's ours. Was he not here? Was he not here then?
All right. Well, it's not making a sound right now, so we'll proceed. You now have before you, for your approval, the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. And that takes us to the consideration of the approval of the minutes from September 6, 2011. Discussion.
Mayor.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville for September 6, 2011, as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will carry us to announcements and comments by the mayor and board. And it is my pleasure at this point in time to introduce to you the newest members of the Starkville Mayor's Youth Council. And at this time, I'll ask you all to come forward.
Okay. We are the Starkville Mayor's Youth Council for the year 2011-2012. We represent several schools, including Starkville High School, Starkville Academy, Starkville Christian, the homeschooling, and East Octibaha. My name is Emily, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Deja, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Ricky, and I go to Starkville Christian.
My name is Brittany, and I go to Starkville Academy.
My name is Najee, and I go to Starkville.
My name is Davis, and I go to Starkville Academy.
My name is Sean Michael, and I go to Starkville Academy.
My name is Veronica, and I am homeschooled.
My name is Katie, and I go to Starkville High School. My name is Callie, and I go to Starkville Academy.
My name is Shaniqua, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Evan, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is LaChelsea, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Anya, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Jasmine, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Talisha, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Tyler Tay, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Deanna Rogers, and I go to Starkville High School.
My name is Marjada Tucker, and I go to East Octibaha.
And let me just say a few things. First of all, I want to let you know a little bit about what this group has gone through to get to where they are right now. They actually started back in May with written applications, and went through a process during the summer that included a meet and greet, and then have gone through oral interviews after that to be selected to the Mayor's Youth Council. And of course, they will engage in service in this community over the next year, and also will interact with City Hall, learning more about how city government works and about how they can get plugged in, not only now, but in the future. We benefit greatly from this program, not only because it is an investment in the youth of this community, but we also get a wonderful youth perspective about things that we should be lending an ear to in government. I also want to say a special word of thanks to Stephanie Shackelford and Marquita Outlaw, who spend countless hours, and in Marquita's case, countless hours after work with this program, making sure that it works and continues to be the success that it is. So let's give these new inductees a big round of applause.
We just want to also thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and that we're honored to be a voice for our community.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments from the members of the board?
One thing I would just say again, just thank you for doing this, and this is, I guess, the second generation of many, but anything y'all can bring to this table over the next year, anything we can do to engage the youth more in this community, any kind of activities you might have, this is a good time that we've got an active mayor that will listen to your concerns and complaints and anything else, so definitely bring them to him, and anything we can do for you over the next year, let us know.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Thank y'all very much.
Is it possible to get them like on one side, like take one picture?
Yeah, I can get in a picture there. It's gonna be a good picture. So, take a boardroom picture. It's gonna be.
Make rows, 2 or 3 rows.
Yeah, that's good. You might want to. Got it? Good deal. All right. I would like a little guidance on setting either one big work session or potentially 2 shorter work sessions. Alderman Perkins?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Based upon my experience and seniority here, I think it would be very prudent for me to respectfully recommend to you and this board that we need to have 2 separate work sessions to deal with these 2 important matters. A, the redistricting, and number 2, the capital improvements. And I would like to set it for a weeknight as opposed to a weekend. So whatever date, maybe if you don't have the dates now, you can have Ms. Spruill to submit some dates for us. But I think it would be best if we have 2 separate work sessions, while these matters are both of humongous magnitude, and we can best utilize our time in 2 separate individual work sessions. So we can get some weeknight work sessions 5:30 or later, so we can accommodate everybody involved. I think that'd be a good thing.
Okay. And that's exactly what I was seeking to find out.
Yes, sir.
And the two items on here are actually two of three that we need to discuss. I think the way to do this, if we're going to separate them, is to have a standalone work session for the redistricting process, because that is a little different than the other two items, and it is something that's going to take a great deal of time. So have a work session that's dedicated to that, and then also in a work session that we would discuss our general capital improvement plan. I also think it would be a good idea to have a preliminary discussion about how we restart the municipal complex process. Of course, at this point, we're back at square one with the bond issue failing on September 27th. I had initially thought that it might be best to wait until our annual retreat in January. I have, I guess, some ideas as I've thought through it, and I know some of you have talked to me, and you'll have some ideas as well. So I think a work session in the near future is a good time for us to at least begin that conversation, and if nothing else, we can frame it up for the January retreat. So I would suggest setting a work session date, and we don't have to set this at the table. I just wanted some guidance as to whether you wanted to have one big work session or whether you prefer two shorter work sessions. And I'll hear more feedback if you've got any. But one work session would be dedicated to redistricting, and then we'd have an additional work session dedicated to our capital improvement plan and the next step in developing that, and also beginning discussions about starting the municipal complex conversation. One format I'll throw out there, and we'll see if it's problematic. Something that has worked well in the past is the 5:30 on Tuesday evening time. Tends to be kind of a staple because we have our board meetings then. We can stagger these on the off-board meeting weeks where we'll meet a lot of Tuesdays in a row, but we know that's a time that generally works well with everybody. Is there any opposition to beginning next Tuesday with the redistricting process, having work sessions on these matters until they're wrapped up, or until we decide we need to use a different format to discuss those things? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll keep our regular board meeting schedule first and third Tuesday of the month, and then starting next week we'll have one on redistricting, then we'll have a board meeting, then we'll have a work session to discuss the capital improvement plan and the municipal complex. Okay. I would now like to introduce the newest member of our city workforce, and that is Willie M. Brooks. The City of Starkville would like to introduce Willie M. Brooks as our new maintenance worker for Public Services Water Division. Willie is originally from Starkville and is a graduate of B.L. Moore in Crawford, Mississippi. Before joining the city, Willie worked in construction for Oswalt Construction in Starkville. Willie is a family man, and his family includes his wife Sarah Brooks, his parents John and Delcia Brooks, and 5 sisters and 3 brothers. He and his family attend St. Matthew's Missionary Baptist Church. In his spare time, Willie enjoys spending time with his dog, cats, and especially his horses. Please join me in welcoming Willie Brooks to the City of Starkville. And that concludes my comments for this evening. Do we have any comments from the members of the board? We have none scheduled.
I want to running late, but good evening to the audience and good evening to my colleagues. I was looking over the oath that we taken back a couple years ago, and sometimes I just feel like we didn't forgot it. And it say, I do swear that I will faithfully support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Mississippi, and obey the laws thereof, that I am not disqualified from holding the office of Alderman, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I am about to enter, so help me God. We take on that oath. And somewhere down the line, I feel like we'd have failed some of the oath because the oath really we say we keep hollering about quality of life for everybody. We keep using that word up here. But the quality of life that we keep hollering for everybody is not fitting everybody. It's not fitting all the community. And we take on that oath. And no matter what race, what sex, or whatever it is, we supposed to faithfully take care of this. And somewhere down the line, all the ordinances that we make, it doesn't accommodate the whole city of Starkville. It doesn't accommodate all the constituents, all the taxpayers. It doesn't accommodate them, some of the ordinances that we make. But I can say all the ordinances that we make, all the crooked schemes that we feel, that we do, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. We keep on doing these things that is not right, and they don't agree with this ordinance, this oath that we sit up and take.
Do we have further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Carp.
I guess my comment's a good time, but what we were just talking about, why we're going to do conversation and start the conversation on the municipal complex. I've been asked a lot of why I think it didn't pass or what my personal opinion was, but in what I do in the emergency management world, a lot of times, just a thought when we do this, let's it's an after-action report, and you want to get your immediate board feedback. So maybe the next meeting we do, let's do some kind of if we could just get something in writing before you get there of what you heard from your constituents, or the reasons it passed, or the reasons they did vote for it, and come back and do that while it's still fresh on everybody's mind. So maybe if everybody, I'd kind of charge everybody before that next Tuesday night meeting to come back and get your feelings of why you think it didn't pass, and so maybe we can correct some of those and address those. So I just want to see that get addressed right off the bat, and so we get a better feel of where we need to go versus waiting third or fourth meeting to try to address that municipal complex. And it doesn't have to be long, just 3 or 4 quick notes of what you felt in your ward. So that's all I've got.
Any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. And any citizens wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. I'd like to recognize Vice Mayor Citron in Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you, Alvin.
Good afternoon.
The taxpayers, the reason that the bond issue failed, we have 2 bond issues already out there that we got to pay off. We don't know when they are paid off. The next problem is we need jobs. We need jobs bad. Sad that Columbus is already 2 steps ahead of us. We need to protect our police. It's a sad thing if our police officers get burnt out because of the facility that they're in. A lot of statistics they complain about we are not handicap accessible. They need to get to the city hall. They can't because not handicap accessible. Police department not handicap accessible. These are some of the concerns of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments?
Members of the board, my name is David Mullendorf, and I'm the proprietor of Hotel Chester, and I'm here to comment on item 7A on your agenda, which is with respect to the State Theater requesting a supporting resolution from the city on their application to the ABC Division of the Tax Commission for an extension of the hours of operation under the existing resort status. I'm not here to tell you what to do one way or the other, but I want to give you some information. I have resort status 2. That was provided the facility when they were together under the Ivy Guest House and the State House Hotel. It was done because there was a restriction, I think it was 750 feet from a religious facility. So the hotel wouldn't be able to serve alcohol unless they had some kind of exemption, which came about via the resort status that was granted what is now 2 facilities. It was granted with the hours being restricted so that it was no different than any other alcoholic establishment. So its main purpose was to allow the serving of alcoholic beverages in the same fashion as other establishments that didn't have distance restriction from religious establishment. And I think it's, whether it's a church or a church school or something like that. Nonetheless, I want to say that I'm having difficulty in understanding several things. First of all, it says clearly that if there is a part of the requirements for being able to get extended hours, assurance from the sheriff or chief of police that he will enforce the local option beverage control laws of the state of Mississippi and the rules and regulations of the Mississippi Department of Revenue. I can tell you I have a long established trail of phone calls between myself, the police department, and 911 under the current hours. There's enough of a problem that I think extending the hours requires you to be able to either provide the police department with additional billets or staffing. Yes, sir.
1
My
minute.
3 minutes, okay. So that the problem isn't exacerbated by people who are already in some state of inebriation, just getting further inebriated. And I'm a night owl by necessity, because I have to watch and try and protect the best interest of my customers. And I can tell you that there are lots of things that go on as these operations close down that only a night owl would know about.
Your
That's-
time's expired.
Okay.
Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizens' comments? Any further citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. And our first public appearance tonight is a public appearance by the State Theater. And you will have a maximum of 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then I'll ask that you stay either seated or up front and give the board an opportunity for questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank the city of Starkville and the board for allowing us to come this evening. My name is Daniel Wade. I'm the local owner, I guess you'd say, the day-to-day operator, and this is Sonny Desai, my business partner in this venture. With us today, we have a few staff members who've come just to overview this. A little bit about myself. I'm an attorney here in Starkville. I've been in the, I guess you'd call it, the bar restaurant business for the past 3 years. During that time period, if I'm not mistaken, our establishments are the only ones which have received no liquor or alcohol-related citations of any kind. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only, maybe one other privately owned business in the city which does a substantial business which can boast that same claim. Now, what we are here today to talk about is the extension of our hours, as we do have resort status, which, as Mr. Mullendore already brought to your attention, which was granted in 1994 to what was then the State House Hotel. If you all got, I believe, a little packet which we tried to put together. I'm not much for putting together packets, so if there's anything that I've left out, hopefully I can answer any questions later on. one of the things, I don't want to try to gauge safety versus economic reasons. They're both important, and safety, of course, would be a more important reason. But I will address first some different reasons for granting resort status, such as increases in tax revenue, tourism, and then safety issues, which can come about through this. First off, we heard already today talk about Starkville needs more jobs. Just the simple granting of this would enable us to hire a minimum of probably 15 new employees just to cover the new hours, just to be able to staff, because our plan is to also increase our restaurant hours to accommodate the same hours which would match the alcohol service hours. We currently employ between 10 and 15 people. That number varies because we have several part-time which come and go. So that would bring our total to anywhere between 25 and 30 employees that we would be required to hire. And roughly 5 of those would be full-time and 10 part-time. Now, I've got in here, direct revenue. Direct revenue would be something like what we actually bring in through our sales. Everyone is familiar with, and I hate to compare ourselves to cowbells because they have had problems in the past, but they bring in a tremendous amount of revenue to the county simply because they are able to bring in more people out to cowbells, which is out in the county. Now, every time you have football game weekends, and every time, even basketball, anytime someone comes in town, they're used to being able to stay out and spend more money in the city of Starkville because they have later hours in places like Tuscaloosa, Nashville, Baton Rouge, all these different places. So you have all these people who are coming in who basically we cut them off and say at 1 o'clock you have to stop spending money in Starkville because there's nowhere else for you to go. Now, and they also give us the ability to bring in more shows. We recently had some shows which we had a show, I believe it was about 3 weeks ago. We had people from Tuscaloosa, Memphis, and Jackson all drive to Starkville for one of our shows. Now, this show was on a Wednesday night, but it still brought in a significant number of people from Tuscaloosa and Memphis. We have a show this upcoming week in which we have people from Atlanta who will be coming into our show here in Starkville, all the way from Atlanta because of the people that we're trying to bring in. And extending our hours, it would take the risk off of a place like us to be able to bring in these bigger shows, which require more deposit money and more money up front to pay these bands. And these bands increase the number of people which come to Starkville, who stay in Starkville, who eat in Starkville. They won't come to Starkville outside of these bands, these certain people. And the biggest thing, like I've got in here, is just take advantage of whenever Mississippi State has athletic events, and you have all these people coming from out of town who are looking for something to do at night, and who are used to being able to stay out later. And then you've got what I call indirect, which, like I said, hotel stays. And we have these people come from Tuscaloosa, come from Memphis. They're not going to drive back that night. They're going to stay in a hotel. They're going to stay somewhere in Starkville. So then you've got that additional revenue, which is coming from them simply coming in and staying the night in Starkville. So you've got your restaurants to eat at. You've got them going to convenience stores, and you've got them going to stay at the hotels. Now, I also believe, and this is just a theory on my part, that being able to do this would increase other downtown locations in the Cotton District's ability to be more profitable, because when people come to Starkville and they know that you only have an hour left, it goes back to the young people in the college, the primary target. There's no denying that. Most of the time, if they get into town, they'll have an hour to go out. They're going to choose not to, more than likely, because they know, well, it takes us 10 minutes to get there. They close in 50 minutes. But this would also, I believe, benefit places like Mugshots, Zorba's, Old Venice, all these other places, because people are still going to go out where they want to go out. And then they're going to go there, and they have an extra option, which they don't have to risk driving. They don't have to risk any sort of a DUI or anything like that, because they can walk down to the State Theater from all these locations. State Theater is somewhat centrally located, so it's accessible to people all the way down University and down Main, all the apartment complexes, which are somewhat local. Now, just to kind of address some safety issues, obviously when you're talking about alcohol, you have safety issues with people driving, people I guess you're disturbing the peace, and things like Mr. Mullendore addressed with, I think, you have people who kind of hang around and do certain things. But there's a study which I attached to this, which was done in Ontario after they extended their hours. And what the study showed was there's a theory called power drinking theory. And what it is before closing time, people increase their levels of inebriation because they know they've got 10 minutes left, so they'll get 4 or 5 drinks at once. And what the Ontario study actually showed was that when you extend the hours, they don't do that. So it's a more extended time period. So as they're going to drink irregardless. And what it does is it extends the period of time so their body processes alcohol faster or over that period of time. So what you actually get is a lower level of inebriation, which would handle all sorts of issues as far as, people drunk driving, people doing all these sorts of things. Another thing is when everywhere lets out downtown. When you have all the clubs or bars or restaurants all let out at the same time, you've got roughly anywhere from 500 to 1,500 people who let out at one time. When you extend those hours out, you'll have 20 people leave here, 30 people leave here. So it also should help with things like traffic issues downtown because not everybody is leaving all at once. They'll leave over an extended period of time, so it's not so just congested with everybody trying to leave at once. Also, at 1 o'clock, everybody goes home, everybody goes to cowbells. These little house parties which develop, I would venture to guess that most underage drinking will occur at a house party. Whereas at State Theater, we can keep an eye on all these sorts of things. These kids, they're going to go out regardless of whether it's 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock, and they're going to keep going. And so what centralizing everything would do is it would keep everybody under a watchful eye. Now, we have security staff, and our bartenders know when to stop. And so that's another thing. You can keep an eye on everybody. And that's just generally on the safety issues. And nightlife, if you look at somewhere like, they built a furniture market in Las Vegas for a reason, because there's nightlife there. There's not much furniture manufactured in Las Vegas, but now Tupelo has to compete with Las Vegas because Las Vegas had nightlife. And if you go on any Better Business Bureau or Tourist Convention Center, they always talk about what is there to do in town. What is there to do in Starkville? Well, if we have these better bands, we've had a Beatles group come in last week. We've got Bucky Covington, who is a country act, coming in this weekend. We've got all these different acts that we can keep bringing in to give people more reasons to come to Starkville. And this takes a huge burden off of us because we don't have to risk as much. And the risk is what keeps us from booking certain bands, from bringing in these bigger acts. And when we have that less risk, I wouldn't mind bringing these bigger acts to Starkville and being able to bring more people to Starkville. And I know the basis of this is about alcohol. It's about the alcohol sales, but there's more to it than just the alcohol. It's about the ability to create some more jobs and more tax revenue. But also, if you look through that Ontario study, I don't know if you've read it or not, but it also shows things like the drunk driving actually was not a factor in that study after the extended hours, which I know is a concern for a lot of people. Will this increase the number of drunks on the streets of Starkville? No, because A, they shouldn't be driving as much, and B, because it shows that their alcohol is a lower level of inebriation. So at the end, what I just want to focus on, it's about alcohol, but I want you to remember the job creation and tax revenue, which could be realized by the city of Starkville from this. Because I know we always, whenever I watch the meetings, there's always about the 2% tax. There's always about different taxes. So, and that'll conclude my presentation.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wade, I've just had a brief opportunity to meet you, and we certainly thank you for being in Starkville and local attorney here, and we appreciate your business. Just a few questions for you, nothing personal. The commission last changed the order for the State House Hotel as to hours back, I think, do you agree, back in December 2009, so that you can have the same hours for sell alcoholic beverages that the city of Starkville has. Is that a correct statement? Now, on Mondays, you're able to sell alcoholic beverage, beer, light wine until 12 midnight. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tuesday, you're able to sell to 12 midnight.
Correct.
Wednesday, you're able to sell to 12 midnight.
Correct.
Thursday, you're able to sell to 12 midnight.
Correct.
Friday, you're able to sell to 1 a.m. on our ordinance. That's Saturday morning.
Correct.
Saturday night, you're allowed to sell alcohol beverages until 1 a.m. Sunday morning, correct?
Correct.
And then also under the Sunday sale ordinance that was passed on the 43 vote during this term, you're able to sell on Sunday, every Sunday, from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you talk about growth and economic development. Don't you agree with me that there are enough hours in place already, attorney, to sell and consume alcohol? Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I would say that being able to up the table until 1 is a bonus compared to what it used to be. However, there's a lot more to be realized, and the only way to realize these extra revenue streams is to do such things such as extend the hours. So you would open up a whole new stream of revenue versus what you've already got.
So in other words, you saying you disagree with me that that you're saying that there are not enough hours now to sell and consume alcohol. Or you agree or disagree with that?
I would kind of qualify
Yes,
the
sir.
answer
Go
just a little
ahead.
bit.
Yes, sir.
If I were to qualify, let's say you've got a stream running to feed a farm, and a little bit of water is great, but if you can expand that stream and get a little more water, that's even better.
Right, let me just make a few more comments here. Mr. Attorney, no disrespect here, but I know you're on public appearance, but I need to address this because I had a lot of questions with our CAO, what you're going to ask for.
Okay.
So it's my understanding, am I correct, that you want this board to have a resolution? First of all, you want the resolution because you're hoping that a resolution from this board will help facilitate your approval with the tax commission. That's number one, right?
It's the Department of Revenue is the one.
Or whatever the
just-
technical name is, the tax commission, all the same synonymous. So you
Yes, sir.
want that resolution to help facilitate your approval.
Yes, sir.
Now, so am I correct? You're asking for the hours so you can sell not to 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. You want to be able to sell to 3 a.m. on Saturday morning.
That's correct.
And then you want not only from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday night is enough for you. You want 2 more hours on Sundays. You want to be able to sell to 3 a.m. on Sunday mornings, right?
From Saturday, yes. From Saturday evening to Sunday morning.
Well, I
yes.
said that correct, to 3 a.m. Sunday morning, right?
Yes.
Right, so actually, Mr. Attorney, I think that the hours we got right now, in terms of, in other words, from what you have, I think that's enough hours right now to sell and consume alcoholic beverages. I think that in my opinion, this is Alderman Perkins' opinion, I think that there's a potential of facing drunken drivers that time of the morning. Now, additionally, Mr. Mullendorf has some very valid comments there. It's going to potential require a higher and greater presence of the police. Even if you stop selling alcohol at 3 o'clock, they're going to want some more at 4 and 5. I mean, they're not going to want to go home. It's going to be want to sell alcohol all time, day and night. We can have growth and economic development under the existing hours that we have. If it was left up to Alderman Perkins, I would vote to repeal the Sunday sales. I think that should be looked at enough gratitude from a majority of extended hours. I think he has the potential for more alcohol-related accidents. I think and plus it puts in my opinion, the city in a bad precedent here. If we were to grant, or if a resolution, of course this is not what's before us right now, but if a resolution were to come forth and this board approves it, then other business owners who may go to resort status, they're going to be up in this door asking us, well, you did this to the State House, now we want this. So we have to be very careful. People are going to come to Starkville and Mississippi State because we're a land grant institution, we're a bulldog country. I mean, they're not going to stop coming to Mississippi State University, the home of Mississippi State Bulldogs, because of alcohol. Nobody can convince me that I was born and raised here. I'm a native Starkvillian. I don't care if we abolish alcohol, if we stop selling alcohol, people are still going to come to this land grant institution. We need to make a statement that we are not in the business of selling alcohol all times of night. I mean, that's not what it's about. I mean, we can have growth and economic development. It depends how we pursue that within the hours that we have. There's enough trouble out here on this street. Now, these officers they're faced with a very onerous task of enforcing all of the laws and of the state and the city and the ordinances that we now have. And I've sat here on this board, and no disrespect to my colleagues, but I've sat here since July the 6th of 1993, and I've been faced with issues and matters and things, and just experiences tell me. We got something on the agenda in a few minutes about waiving a fee permit. I don't mind helping these people, but when you do one exception, you're gonna have to accommodate others. Why? Because the Constitution says that, as you know, Mr. Attorney, because we have to treat people who are similarly situated, that are similarly as required, as you know, by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. But I think if, of course, I'm just only one, but, it's whatever the majority is board. But let me just say this in closing. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I want to fulfill my job and duties as long as I'm at this table. I took the oath here, and I'm going to do my job. Regardless of what the vote is, I'm going to say what I got to say. I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to vote how I want to vote, regardless of how these people vote. And I've done that ever since I've been here, and I'm going to continue to do that. So no disrespect to you, but I think you have enough hours right now. I think that's asking way too much for us to pass a resolution, and it may pass with this board, but it won't be unanimous. So, but I think that we appreciate your desire for growth and development, but we need to do it in a means of not asking to extend hours. And we have accidents related to students. There have been a number of them this year. They don't get the full reporting in the papers and the media, but if you hear about it, we have people leaving clubs. There's been a number of them this year, and that's going to increase. It's not going to go away as long as you're going to have the officers from the police department. They're going to be they're going to do these DUI checks. Maybe if they have a greater presence downtown, and no disrespect to the police, they are out there, but maybe we have a greater presence where they sell all this alcohol, it'll stop some of all this late night drinking. But 12 o'clock is long enough. I'm not speaking against your business. I'm not speaking against selling it, but I think we have already enough hours to sell and consume alcohol. But again, I appreciate what your business being here. But as for a resolution, I don't think that that we need to do it. And also, but last but not least, but it's a precedent. I had a bar owner that's walked into my office today from a very well reputable and established bar. It's a very successful businessman in this community in the city of Starkville walked into my office today and addressed this same issue. He was very sincere. He said, Mr. Perkins, I don't mean to take your time. Well-respected businessman. And I said, just come on in. I said, have a seat. And he addressed this issue. He said, well, if others come in and request state resort status, and you give that to the State House Hotel, and we come and ask for similar hours, then we want the same treatment. I said, you are exactly correct, because that's what the law of this state in the United States of America requires, that we treat people who are similarly situated similarly. But for those reasons, and you mean well, I want to keep you encouraged. Young attorney here, young businessman. I know some of your relatives there, but I just cannot support your request. And I know it's not an agenda item, and as I was discussing with the Chief Administrative Officer, anytime a matter hits the agenda, it can become an action item. Even though it's not on the agenda, I don't think it takes an alderman to make a motion, and that automatically amends the agenda. But I cannot support it for those reasons. Mr. Mayor, I'm done.
Any further questions or comments?
I'd like to say something if I could.
No,
I can't.
your time's up.
Okay.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
You may.
Mr. Wade, the order that you referenced, the 1994 order, governs lots 10, 11, and 12 on Block 5 of Main Street. Do you know, as you sit here today, what lot the State Theater occupies?
I believe it's whichever is the last coming from whichever direction the lots are listed.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they start on which side, but it'd be the last of the lots.
If you choose to pursue this matter, would you get conclusive proof to the Chief Administrative Officer, Lynn Sproul, that the State Theater does in fact occupy the lots that are designated in the order?
Oh, yes, sir. It's in the original order that 215 is a part of one of the lots, but I've got it somewhere.
The original order is in the packet, and I don't see where 215 Main Street is designated as one of the lots.
On the page 13 of the packet I included, it's of Block 5, which includes the premises of the State House Hotel, 215 East Main Street. It actually lists the address of
Okay, and I just want to be just for sure that it's within one of those lots. And then the other question I have is, in the packet is the 1994 order, but I would like to see the 2009 December 1 amendment as well.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? we have any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
The next matter on the agenda is public appearance by Morgan McDowell.
We're going to send out banner permits to area Starkville businesses that they get to decorate and do a little PR for homecoming from Mississippi State. The theme this year is "With Praise Our Voices Ring." This will allow advertising for businesses as well as advertising for Mississippi State homecoming. And it's going to be a competition, and the winner will be announced on homecoming day. The banners will be 14 square feet, Coca-Cola banners from Clark Beverage Company. We're asking that you waive the $15 fee for these businesses that are willing to promote the homecoming. We'll be sending out banner permits for the businesses to complete, and we'll return the permits to the code enforcement office. I've already talked to Miss Vicky and up there in the code enforcement office, and all banners will be in compliance with all regulations set by the city of Starkville. They will also first be approved by the code enforcement office.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. McDowell, how many businesses will this be?
We have not sent the forms out yet. We're waiting to get this approved before we send the forms out, but roughly 30 to 40 businesses.
Is that about how many participated last year?
I'm not sure on the exact number.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
So you're just saying that this $15, you don't think you're gonna have active participation from the businesses unless we waive the fee?
I know the fee was waived last year, and that's what we were going to ask again, if we could get that $15 waived, because it's more of an incentive for a business to enter into the sign competition. It really adds a lot to the Starkville businesses and everybody coming in town for homecoming. They see the signs and they see which businesses are in support of homecoming, and just gets everybody excited.
So you're gonna send out notification to the businesses, are they gonna be charged to be in this competition?
No, sir, they will not be charged.
So there's not gonna be any money made by the student association?
No, sir.
Just a strictly banner competition?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Corey?
Mayor, I do not see an action item for this on the agenda. Am I correct?
There is currently not one.
Okay. When I guess the board is done asking questions, I would like to make a motion.
Okay. Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Do we have any further questions or comments?
I got one. Just remember, if we do approve this, if anyone come up here asking for the same thing, we know we don't have to approve it.
Do we have any further questions or comments?
And I just have a comment that I have no idea how the vote will go, but I suspect part of what you will hear tonight will be the city being at a point where we have waived fees and waived this and that and whatever, and you may just be the touch point for that. So, nothing personal.
Further questions or comments? Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Corey, would you like to make a motion now?
Sure. Given that we approved this last year, I would be happy to make a motion that we approve a waiver for the Student Association for the purpose of allowing the placement of banners for homecoming competition.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of a fee waiver for the MSU Student Association for the homecoming banner competition. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, thanks.
Any discussion? Any discussion by the members of the board? Any discussion? Alderman Sistrunk.
I would like to encourage the board, however we vote on this issue, to consider developing a policy going forward about waiving fees and that sort of thing, because this is a precedent that's been set for this particular group, and I do see the merit to beginning to have a more formal policy about this, so that you don't come before us knowing that we wouldn't approve this. So I do think it's a policy we need to consider how we want to go forward.
Further discussion? Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just like I told the gentleman from the State House, I'm gonna go ahead and support this now, but let's not be inconsistent on any similar future requests. So let's keep that in mind. So I'm ready to vote.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman Carver.
I guess my question is this: last year the fees were waived, but what about before last year? 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
I do not believe, last year I believe was the first year. I researched that.
Okay.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure is approved.
Thank you.
And that will carry us to our final public appearance tonight.
He left.
Oh, okay. Well, as Mr. Wallace is no longer with us, his item was approved on the consent agenda without objection. I'm going to rule that matter is now moot and remove it from the agenda. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, what was previously item C under public appearances has been removed from the agenda, and that will carry us to the lone remaining item under mayor's business that was not placed on consent. And this comes from a request from a developer who is doing a project to, instead of doing 2-phase construction on the streets for the project, to do 1-phase construction. As it currently stands, our subdivision regulations only accommodate for 2-phase construction of rooms in a new subdivision. So I had a long talk with the city engineer when we got this request, and we'll usually discuss something like this if we have a request that is not currently allowed for by law. And in discussing it, I think we were both of the opinion, but certainly I was of the opinion that the pros of allowing developers the option of either doing all of their roads at once at the outset of their project, or doing the 2-phase construction approach, which is currently required of the ordinance, outweigh the cons of only allowing them to do 2-phase construction. And I guess to walk through this, more or less walk through the points that the city engineer laid out in his memo to you. The reason that 2-phase construction is required is because there is some wear and tear on the roadway while streets are being developed. Of course, you may have observed in developing neighborhoods, oftentimes in the initial stage you have a road that's clearly not finished, and the developer then comes in after the subdivision is 85% complete, finishes the street and dedicates it to the city. Of course, most of the wear and tear of the heavy equipment is done by the time the subdivision is 85% complete. While it is possible that the finished street might take a little more wear and tear while the subdivision is still being developed, if you allow for 1-phase construction, it also holds that there will probably be less damage to the roadway that's finished because it will be a stronger roadway. So it's a positive that you'll probably see less wear and tear during construction if somebody wants to do 1-phase construction. A very significant positive, because this is something I've observed in hearing complaints from citizens, is one of the problems that you'll often run into while a subdivision is in development, and it can take years, sometimes a decade or more, for a subdivision to get from initial development to 85% build out, is while that street is not finished off, the level of the street will sit below the gutters on the street. So instead of draining as a finished street normally would, that street will act as a channel for water that builds up and is difficult to navigate in the neighborhood. So in the event that a developer finishes the street at the outset of the project, then you would not have that to worry about anymore. Of course, the downside is the wear and tear that I alluded to at the outset. Since there are, it's a judgment call whether it's best, and you could make good arguments for two-phase construction and good arguments for one-phase construction. I think it makes sense to allow the developer to have the option whether they want to do one phase or whether they want to do two phase. And after having a lengthy discussion with the city engineer, everything he told me confirmed my own judgment on the subject.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just a question. In looking at this approach, just to think through this, is this a universal problem or is this just an isolated problem? And the reason I'm asking this question is the engineer has alluded to the disadvantage of a one-stage construction, because once the street is done, there could be potholes and other repairs that may be needed, where when you have the two-phase and they go in there toward the end when they get ready to complete it. So are we trying to accommodate a specific developer here, or is this something that is an outstanding and recognizable problem in the city? This regulation, I think, has been in existence for some time. I am not personally aware of any problem, and I'm not speaking against this. I just don't want us to make a hasty decision and move too fast on the request of one developer. But I'm not aware of any potential problem that has arisen. Maybe it's something that, and just throwing this out, I'm not against this, but maybe it's something that we want to look at further. We don't want to just accommodate one developer if this is not a universal problem. Now, the city engineer, of course, I won't read that to you in the memo, talks about the primary disadvantage when the city accepts the streets as it is will most likely contain patches where base repairs have been fixed, and the found roadway surface will not be consistent in appearance and may be uneven in places when the patches are installed. So I don't know whether we want to change it to that policy. We don't want to do something we don't do something radical here, and we need to take a very conservative approach to make sure that these streets are done right. This is a very key decision that goes to a quality of life and infrastructure matter. So because this goes into our funds there, there's a public street and, may require maintenance and overlay more often. I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but I just do want to conclude by saying, and that's why I did not want this going to the consent agenda, I just want to make sure that if we're going to change to this, this is a problem that needs fixing. I want to make sure this is something that's not broken. I don't want to make sure it's not something that we're trying to just accommodate someone to be accommodating for the sake of accommodating. This needs to be something that's really promoting our best interests, health, safety, and welfare for our city. But we need to just look at the broader picture of that before we do this now, because we don't want nothing to come out where our streets come into a poor condition. And we don't have enough money as it is on these capital improvement, this street overlay. We're having to do a fifth of a street or a tenth of a street and all these type of things in this modern day and time. So, but those are things we look at, so if we need to look at this thing further, we need to do that. So let's just make sure we make the right decision so we have to visit. But I'm not aware of any problem that has existed, and that means I don't think this is a universal problem unless you know something that I don't know that has not been shared with the board. But I just wanted to throw those things out there. I'm not against this, but I just want to make sure that we make the right decision for the city. So just want to make those comments. I'm done.
And this matter is being brought forward now because a developer that is currently in a project made a request. But in the conversation with the city engineer, I learned this is not an uncommon request, and it's something that our regs don't accommodate. Certainly, I wouldn't have moved on it and made the request if I had made a determination that it leaves either the taxpayers of this city ultimately at a disadvantage, or the potential homeowners in a subdivision down the line at a disadvantage. Now, let me also say, because you you asked whether there were issues with two-phase construction, I believe, and I have had the opportunity to go through an issue with a developing subdivision where it very much caused numerous issues that the first phase of a roadway was complete, and a period of years passed before the second phase of the roadway was complete, and it caused extensive drainage problems in the area. And in conversations with the city engineer, he says this is not an uncommon occurrence. So again, that's another thing that cuts in favor of allowing the one-phase approach. Alderman Perkins.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to throw those things out there so we can hear these things. But let me just say this. Sometimes things may be my suggestion or my request, and Alderman Dumas or Alderman Vaughn may say something that may convince me otherwise. I just want to have this discussion. So just because you brought it does not means we have to pass it. So, and no disrespect to your bringing it, but that's why I wanted to throw those comments out there, because, like I said, I may bring something, Alderman Dumas or Alderman Corey may say something, may convince otherwise, may have some good points on things. So that's why we have to think through these things. If this is something that may not be uncommon, but we have not heard of that before, but let's not be quick to change policy and guidelines just to accommodate one person, unless we feel that it's going to have a very enormous benefit on the overall welfare of the people. So that's experience talking from Alderman Perkins. So now, no disrespect, so we just have to respect the experience that I give, but I'm not against that now, but I just want to get those comments out there. So if the board thinks that's a good idea, and I want to support it, Mayor, if it's a good idea, but that's why I wanted to discuss it. So, but as long as it's for the betterment of the city and the engineers are making that representation is for the betterment, and Ms. Spruill looked at it, because I want these matters, before they come to this table, I want the staff, from my personal request, to make sure that they have analyzed these things, that they make sure that they feel that it's in the best interest of the city. Hopefully Ms. Spruill has looked at this, the engineer, if you looked at it and the board's convinced, then that's it. But I want to give those comments, okay? Thank you.
Further discussion. Alderman
Now,
Dennis.
this does not establish it's an either or. You can do one or the other. You don't have to, we're not saying at this point through this ordinance change that you have to do one stage, right?
That's correct. There is an opportunity to convert from a two-stage to a one-stage in the middle of development if that is chosen.
Okay.
So I got a question. In one stage, which is currently that's all we have, that's the only choice for developers, right?
Two-stage.
Two stage is all we have. In one stage, then it's laid, and then they go and start constructing the neighborhood, and it's torn up, and then it's dedicated to the city normally at the 85th percentile on the build out. Well, when that's happening, the city has to go back and fix the road that was torn up during construction?
It'll be the developer's responsibility at
Even
the
if it's been
85% point to go and fix any base failure areas that have appeared. The city, as is currently written, the city would hold some type of a surety to ensure that there's financial means available should the developer default or not meet his obligations, that the city could go in with that surety and make those repairs.
And that's not a change from the way it is now. As it is now, once you hit the 85% build-out point, they're going to have to get the street up to city specs before it can be dedicated to the city. So that part stays the same. The difference would be, and the thing that is a bit of a negative aspect of this, is if all of the road construction is completed at the outset, you may have a little more repair work that the developer is still going to be responsible for at the end. But of course, the positive side of that is you're probably going to have less repair work because the road was stronger in the first place that you're doing at the 85% build out. But all of that remains the responsibility of the developer.
So as far as the posting of the 150% bond, that's to cover any potential material. Would that stay the same?
For the repairs.
For the future repairs, once they reach their final.
Right, and once the developer makes those repairs, to satisfaction of the city would release that bond.
Alderman Corey.
Now, I know what you're proposing is more of an engineering question, but I know that our city planner has been working on our subdivision regs. Have you had an opportunity to run this by him as well? Any feedback?
He
on
has
that?
looked at it. He has. He has started working on the subdivision regs, and I don't know how far along he's gotten on those, but he has looked at it, as well as Ms. Brule, and I've got some feedback from them as well as our attorney.
Okay.
Mayor, one point of clarification. Mr. Kemp, I know I looked at this originally. I want to make sure I'm thinking about this the right way. In the two-stage construction, the bond is 150%. As it's proposed now, in the one-stage construction, the bond is 100%. And in the changeover from two-stage to one-stage, the bond is proposed at 100%. Is that purposeful to back it down?
Yes.
And what's the policy behind that?
The thought behind that is the 150% is to accommodate 150% of the cost of the final layer of asphalt in the two-stage. During the course, you know, one of the disadvantages of two-stage is you don't know when you'll hit that 85% mark. From a developer standpoint, it could be 3 years, it could be 15 years. And during that period, as we all know, here recently, the price of asphalt is very volatile and could very easily go up 50% over the course of that time. So that's the rationale behind the 150%. The 100% is the material has been installed. The finished surface is there. The 100% is just to provide a surety to go back and fix certain areas that may need to be repaired. As the mayor indicated, hopefully the number of repairs will be significantly reduced, and that 100% would be more than we would ever need should the city have to go in there and do it.
Further discussion?
Just like in legal matters, we ask the city attorney, but what's your personal opinion? Are you supporting?
I think that it is definitely something the board should consider. I think it provides more flexibility for developers. Like I said, there's so much uncertainty when you develop a neighborhood on when that 85% mark will be hit. I'm not going to say it's unfair because that's one of the risks that you take as a developer, but I think it would provide developers with a little bit more understanding of exactly what their obligations are going to be. And I think it could be promoted as more development friendly, and I think it could potentially encourage more developers to invest in subdivisions if they know kind of on the front end a little bit more closely, you know, targeted about what they're going to be obligated to spend.
And it's developer friendly because it frees up capital. They don't have to.
Well, I think just because they know pretty much what they're going to be obligated to do. They know, you know, when they take bids to build their subdivision, they know how much it's going to cost to build that road. They know how much it's going to cost for them to put up a bond. They're not going to have to wait 5, 10, 15 years and then put in the last inch and a half of asphalt when nobody knows that, you know, what the price of asphalt will be at that time. And additionally, nobody knows what the condition of the existing roadway will be at the time when they're asked to put that final layer on. So, of course, the longer it goes, the more repairs that are probably going to be required. So I think just a little bit more of a taking out some of the risk, some of the uncertainty is the reason why it'll be more attractive.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to call for a public hearing on amending the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances Appendix B to the subdivision regulations to include modifications to the street specification section regarding the city's acceptance of streets and other related matters as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? This measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is under board business, and it is a presentation by Jason Wooten of Pepper Wooten Engineers and Surveyors on the results of the engineering, hydrology, and hydraulics studies for Maple Drive and Carver Drive drainage areas. Looks like y'all have a little setup to do.
While they're setting up, Mayor, I would like to introduce you and the board to Jason Wooten, and as well as Jason Pepper from Pepper Wooten Engineering and Surveying. And they have been contracted by the city to perform these H&H studies for both Maple Drive and Carver Drive. Sent out a PDF copy of those earlier today. I will have a hard copy in my office for review if you want to stop by and look at the hard copies, bigger maps and that kind of thing. And I apologize for the late delivery of that. They've been working furiously on this to get it ready for tonight. So with that, I'm going to stick around up here and I'll be happy to answer any questions after the presentation. But I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
Good evening. I'm Jason Wooten, Pepper Wooten and Associates. You have a preferred order. Maple Drive is up. If that's okay, we'll.
It's the order you've got the
start with that.
presentation in.
Gotcha. All right, Maple Drive, we were asked to do a hydrologic and hydraulic study. In layman's terms, a drainage study of this area. And basically what it included was the drainage ditch behind the residences along Maple Drive. And in the study, we basically had to expand that area to include, it's a storm sewer that comes from the ditch through here and out across the Stark Road. Just a brief synopsis on that. Basically, what we're asked to do, again, was a hydrologic and a hydraulic analysis of the existing conditions, and then develop at least 2 conceptual mitigation plans if flooding was found. Basically, when we ran through our analysis, we found that extensive flooding will occur along the from the intersection of Maple Drive and Birch Drive all the way down to the end of Maple. Cause of that is basically the storm sewage that starts at that ditch, routes its way through to Maple Drive and on across Stark Road to a drainage easement, is undersized, and it's actually undersized for a 25-year and a 100-year storm event. That was kind of disturbing. From a design standpoint, we can understand not quite meeting a 100-year event, but the 25 was kind of eye-opening. From that, we went and developed 2 alternates for possible mitigation. One was to bypass the ditch altogether.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Just so I get when you say storm sewer, you're talking about storm water? You're not talking about?
Yes, we are
Okay.
correct. Has nothing to do with sanitary sewer whatsoever.
Okay.
We're literally talking about water that's hit the ground from the sky, run into an inlet or a ditch, collected into a pipe, and sent on downstream.
And 25-year and 100-year, I'm sorry, I missed the very first part of this. 25-year and 100-year storm events are statistical terms. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have 2 100-year storms back to back.
Correct. Technically, statistically, a 100-year storm, you have a 1% chance of having that every year. 25-year storm obviously is greater chance of having that every year. As a side note, FEMA looks at the 100-year storm as their base flood storm. That's what your FEMA firms are developed from. So, and once we did that analysis, we got to looking at alternatives, and what we found, the preferred solution for us, we consider alternate 1, is to bypass the existing system altogether. And I will show you all more details on this in a minute. Basically, send a new system out along the back of those residential lots, cross Stark Road and tie into that easement, as I'll show you in a minute. The other alternate is just to increase capacity along Maple Drive. Actually excavate the pipe, replace the pipe with better pipe, or larger pipe, and that would have to be taken out all the way to the drainage easement west of Stark Road as well. The drainage basin we're talking about, 96.4 acres. Due to its size, we use the SCS method of hydrologic modeling. Weighted curve number for those who care is 84.9. Yes.
Your 96.44, is that all of Lowe's parking lot? That whole, that's a lot of land to be coming down one ditch.
That is not all of Lowe's. Well, I'll show you the exact, what we figured in there. With that, your 25-year peak flow is 289.75 cubic feet per second. 100 year is 367.95. This is the drainage area we're talking about. And as you see, as you were asking, not all of Lowe's quite makes it in. We're talking about this area here, mostly residential. What we did was we took some city maps, the utility maps that the city provided us, topography that the city provided us, our survey data that we collected on site, and the aerial image you're looking at in the background, and developed the drainage basin from there. And all the extra lines in there and text, or basically the sub-drains, kind of help us figure out where our water's going inside that basin. Essentially, you have this large area and this area coming into the beginning of the ditch in here, and of course those few smaller areas contribute to the ditch. The rest of this is more or less Maple Drive that goes on across the Stark Road. And the results of that, I apologize, that text is actually quite blurry. Again, the sewage was found to be undersized. Inefficient storm drains causes backwater conditions at Maple Drive inlets and the drainage ditch itself. And can y'all read the table, or is that too blurry? Okay. Well, basically, in a nutshell, what it's telling you is at full capacity, they're about 50% lower than they need to be, if my math and memory serves me correctly. Obviously, quite smaller than they really need to be. So our solution after that, well, excuse me, before we go into solutions, what's produced by that are these two flooding conditions. The light blue area is what you'll see in a 25-year storm, and the darker blue shading outside of that is what the spread would be in a 100-year storm. Obviously, you can tell there is significant damage to private properties and also to the public right-of-way and infrastructure along Maple Drive. Proposed alternate 1 was to install a new storm sewer. It bypassed Maple Drive. The good thing there is you actually remove some of the demand on the Maple Drive system. Basically taking some of that offline will allow Maple Drive to function okay. And also routing it the way we're talking about, it reduces utility conflicts within Maple Drive to reconstruct all of that. The downside is the city is going to have to obtain some drainage easement through private property.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've been
No,
dealing
that's
with this a
fine.
little bit. Okay, so that's your first option. Where is the majority of the water going to flow? Is that going to be just south of Maple Drive before it ever comes down the ditch?
As you see here, this is the option we're talking about, right here.
Right.
Both options actually have us to improve the small section of ditch that's natural now. But we're route down the back of the private lots, cross Stark Road, and then feed into this drainage easement. And up here is where we're dumping out right now, existing conditions. We're talking about grading this so that that would actually feed back in to its original spot anyway.
To where it takes that hard 90 and just continue out?
Yeah, at that hard 90 would be a box that would feed that, or force that back out to the north. So basically what we're talking about is removing probably 1/3 of the drainage basin off of Maple Drive. And that would allow this storm system here to have less demand on it and hopefully reduce some of the flooding in that area as well.
So the existing pipe, our water flow goes west, then turns north to the north side of Maple, and then goes on the north side of Maple. Is that what I see with that hatch line? That then goes under Stark?
What we have right now is you have the ditch section here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a pipe that comes into here, ties into the system here, and routes back up.
On the north side of Maple?
Yes. 48, if I'm not mistaken. 36. Okay, yeah, there's a 48 over here, right there, okay. So we're talking 36-inch pipe is what we're looking at here, and it's grossly undersized.
So the size of this ditch then now that proceeds east and west under Stark, under the new route, would be what size pipe?
That pipe is 54 up to a point and then switches. And then switches to 60, I believe it was.
So we would maintain the current, where the current natural swell is now. Would that be maintained open, or would that be piped as
Here?
well? Yes, there.
That would be an improved ditch.
Okay.
Actually, since this area here is concrete now, we propose to improve the ditch geometry, pave it, possibly leave it as natural, and then size this pipe accordingly so that all this water gets out.
So all your infiltration then is happening back here where the open ditch is. You don't have much inflow west of there?
That's correct. Now, our survey did not extend out to the northwest side of Lowe's to honestly nitpick where water goes in that area. So, but the drainage basin kind of incorporates that area, so the numbers are taken care of. We just, I could not tell you here tonight exactly where that water will enter the system.
Understand.
That ditch right there is already concrete, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, what, behind
Outside of that red line right there, right
Right.
up in here is the concrete section now.
Yeah, that's all.
Yes, sir.
With very inadequately high size. I live there, I know.
Any more questions?
Your theory on the pipe and covered section?
Sir?
Your theory on the pipe and covered section, is that a water flow? Does that cut down on water flow, or is it?
The pipe itself?
The pipe, yeah, the restriction.
Why would you switch from the open ditch to piped?
Well, at the ditch, basically there's a bit of a bluff. The ground actually raises up in here. So if we go and actually ditch that area, to put your standard trapezoidal shaped ditch, obviously the ditch would have to fall from the existing end down to Stark Road. As that gets deeper and you spread your sides out, that has a very good possibility of actually getting into the private residence as it is. The city does not need to go buy houses, so we honestly thought that piping was the best option. Okay? All right. Alternate 2 was to just increase the size of the existing system. The good thing is you will not have to obtain drainage easements. The biggest issue is going to be major utility conflicts. It's probably a spider web of telephone, cable, water, sanitary sewer, and other utilities in that area that you're just going to have to contend with during construction. You will also have to reconstruct a large portion of Maple Drive in that area. And it will be inconvenience to your private residents in that area during construction. And what we're talking about is increasing these pipes in here and all the way across Stark Road. Don't remember the exact size we bumped those up. It's pretty significant. It was on the order of about 12 inches for each one, I think. And again, we would increase or improve the ditch section on this method as well. One issue we did find with the ditch itself was at some point a 36-inch culvert was installed in the ditch. Roughly about where it makes the transition from concrete to natural. There's a short section of 36-inch culvert in there. We would recommend removing that simply because it's kind of a choke point that could cause flooding. It's not the main problem, but it does not help the situation. So we,
That ditch flooded long before that 36-inch pipe was ever put in there. That segment, I'm sorry, I know I'm out of order. That segment pipe was left because I basically told them to put my pipe and yank it up. When they took the other 300 feet of pipe out, we had covered pipe in that ditch. That whole pipe, that whole ditch, beyond the concrete had piping. It had the wrong size pipe in the piping. I'm sorry, y'all. My house was flooded for 40 years, and I've been listening to stuff like this for 40 years. I cannot live in my house, and now I'll shut up.
once that section of pipe's removed, that area will be regraded, and the remaining natural channel will be improved either with a concrete line, trapezoidal section. Gabion line section will be more or less the invert of a step pyramid. You can think of that. The Gabion section is a basket filled with stone. So you're in 3x1 sections, I think is what we looked at. And that would stagger up kind of like Legos. And of course, you could keep it natural. It's your least efficient option for conveying water down the ditch, but you could leave it natural and just grade the bottom out to make it more caustic grade across the bottom of the ditch. And that is what we looked at. Do y'all have any questions on that?
Do we have any questions or comments from the members of the board?
If you grade that out, will that stop the flooding?
To simply grade it?
Yeah.
No. The ditch improvements would have to come with our alternate 1 or 2. There is no improving the ditch to fix this issue. Improving the ditch basically gets the water to the blockage quicker. The whole issue is the storm drains west of the ditch itself.
So, I'll say, first of all, back up and say thanks for doing this. I know we've been waiting, and there is a history to this. We inherited both of these drainage issues, and so I guess this is an Edward/Jason question. Of the two, proposals, is the one behind the house going to be a lot cheaper on the city versus rebuilding all of Maple Drive and the utilities? And
we were not actually looking at it financially, but speaking with Mr. Kemp, yes, alternate 1 is a little bit cheaper. I don't know on what magnitude.
Right.
He has the numbers on that, but it is cheaper.
Pretty
We've
obvious.
run some preliminary cost estimates, and I would say that alternate 1 is going to be about $150,000 cheaper than alternate 2. And then depending on which ditch improvement section is selected, of course, there's different costs depending on that. From earthen would be the cheapest, the next would be concrete, and then the third, the highest would be the Gabion wall section.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think last board meeting, Mr. Devlin made a presentation about some of the problems that occurred over on Carver Drive, and it seems like some of those problems initiated with trying to alleviate a drainage problem in that part of town by creating some commingling maybe of stormwater and sewer discharges, and systems just didn't function properly. Would this one have the least, as I understand what you're showing me there, this one would have the least likely chance to impact in some unintended way the sewerage system as not the stormwater sewage, but not the stormwater, but the sewerage system?
Yes, ma'am. We foresee this one having much less impact on any existing utilities, including the sanitary sewer conveyance. This routed down the back of the lots. Now, we did not do a one call or a utility survey to see what's at the back of the lot, but logic tells us that most utilities are going to be up front.
Okay.
So this has less impact on those. And of course, we do not look at what's out on Stark Road either, but we're looking at 90-degree crossing, so it's much better than trying to parallel anything in there.
so I guess I just want to get this on record. You're saying this is fixable if the money's there?
Now, the full design has not been made. This is a conceptual design. But yes, it leans definitely toward a fixable problem. There is a solution.
There is a solution, and you don't expect, there is a way to keep the water from flowing outside the ditch.
Yes, actually, both alternates would keep the ditch within its means. Honestly, with the Gabion, you'd have to raise them up to kind of build up a wall. And with the natural section, you would be including a berm along the residential lots to ensure that water doesn't pop out into them. By berm, I'm talking about 8-10 inches, 2 feet, nothing more than kind of a rise and roll back into the yard. So we're not talking about something intrusive like you would see in New Orleans or something like that.
And you're obviously working with things that are there now, but if you were designing this from the beginning, alternate 1 also sounds like it would be the The
If we
one
were
that
at the beginning and Maple Road was under construction, then sure, we'd ride it down Maple Road. It gives better access to the city for maintenance. It's obviously more logical to kind of get it away from the houses into the road. It's kind of the classic way it's done.
Okay, but we're not at the beginning, right? Okay.
But with the drainage ditch running toward the back, obviously it can be done this way. It makes pretty good sense to just keep that continuation.
Further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I know I said I'll just shut up. Can I ask one more thing?
You may.
I didn't get to show it to you every single. Post office has a pipe that drains out of their retention pond, pours down behind these properties up here, and all of that pours into our ditch.
We took that into account.
You taking that, because that's
Yes,
a
ma'am.
tremendous amount of work.
And actually, if you will see that blue line right there, that is the drainage line that we found coming from the pond in the area of the post office.
I'm not talking about the pond, I'm talking about the post office detention pond. Post office
That
detention pond.
is the post office detention pond. I'm sorry for not clarifying.
The cow pond up there is not what it's called.
Yes, that was taken into account. The post office was actually, we took a stab at doing a little detention analysis on it, so that was included in our overall analysis.
Okay. Proceed.
If y'all will bear with me 1 second. All right, we were also asked to do the same study, drainage study on Carver Drive. Our study basically focused on the drainage ditch and the storm drains at the back of the residential lots north of Carver Drive, all the way around to the end of the cul-de-sac where it comes back into the confluence of the other ditch. In our analysis, as we looked at it, we did notice that FEMA had some detailed studies all the way down to Reed Road, so we expanded our survey to include that. So our analysis actually extends from the Reed Road crossing up to the confluence and then around Carver up to Hawassi. And that's the area we're talking about here. Again, we did the hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of the existing conditions. We developed a conceptual mitigation plan. And then part of the objectives is to assist the city with preparation of a LOMR that would have to be applied for through FEMA. A LOMR is required, just a very brief education, you probably know this, but when you alter a drainage way that's in a flood zone, you have to provide the information to FEMA. That's a mandate by them.
Mr. Mayor, let me stop this. Are you an engineer?
Yes, I am a professional engineer.
Okay, what kind of engineer you are?
Civil.
How long have you been practicing?
13 years.
How many studies of this you done?
How many hydrologic studies?
Yes,
or
sir.
Studies of this magnitude?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, a few, several.
So you testified in courts and given expert opinions?
I've never testified in court, no, sir.
Okay. Now, you say that, what really made me stop you right here, you said alter a waterway. I mean, how did you arrive at the opinion that this is an alteration? Now, this is an open ditch. I mean, so how is this going to be an alteration?
At some point in the past, there was a 66-inch corrugated metal pipe put in tributary to Four Town Creek. FEMA has no record of that, therefore they're going to consider it an alteration to that waterway. And they're going to be looking for LOMR applications to back that modification up.
Now, let me just ask you this question. I mean, no disrespect to you. Will you actually give a certain opinion on your findings here?
Am I asked to give a certain opinion on my findings?
Yes, sir.
I'm here to provide you the technical information that I found.
So
and
you,
my opinion, based on my experience on how to fix these issues.
We were approached by the city because
FEMA talked to you all, Mr. Pepper?
It was actually came through MEMA to the city.
Okay, so y'all haven't talked to MEMA nor FEMA?
No, sir, I have not talked to them yet about this project.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead.
Basically, what we found was extensive flooding could be expected from the intersection of Carver and Hiwassee, all the way down Carver through the cul-de-sac. We focus more in the north. We cannot speak to how much flooding will be to the south of Carver, but you can expect impact to the private residential areas north of Carver and around the cul-de-sac from what we've seen. Basically, what we found is the storm pipes, or excuse me, we say storm pipes for clarification, but it's a culvert crossing Hiwassee and the 66-inch pipe that is in the creek channel now are both undersized for the 100-year events. And I guess we should qualify that in, most engineers don't design for a 100-year event. Okay, we look at 10 to 25, something more reasonable. But when you start altering drainage ways, as we're looking at here, you have to start looking at a 100-year event. Simply because FEMA gets involved, base flood elevations can get altered, and a whole big mess gets started that way. So we did this analysis based on the 100-year event. And basically the only solution we could come up with is to increase conveyance in that area. As our analysis progressed, we found the natural channel actually functions pretty well.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
you say that's for 100 years. Will that accommodate a 25-year event?
Yes. Yes.
The
sir.
pipe, the present pipe that they're now.
Oh, that's there now?
Right.
I hate to speak toward that directly. I did not actually run the numbers on it, but if I had to speculate, I'd say it's, yeah, I would think it would, simply because of how it handles the 100. It wasn't overtopped by a major amount, so it would be close.
Go ahead.
This drainage basin is 496 acres. Again, we use the SCS method. The weighted SCS curve number on this one is 84.6, and 100-year peak flow, which will be realized at the Reed Road crossing, is 1,327 cubic feet per second. And this is the drainage area we're talking about. Basically, you're extending from more or less downtown all the way through Hospital Road and into this residential area up here. And just, that is Reed Road right there for kind of get you oriented on where we're looking.
The basin for tributary 2 is where?
Tributary 2 is this one and this one. It's kind of reverse on how FEMA numbered them, but Tributary 5 is the main ditch right through here. Tributary 2 picks up here and wraps back around.
Could you show me again where it dumps out on Reed Road?
Reed Road right here.
At the
is
intersection
basically
of
crossing at Reed Road.
Reed Road and Hospital?
So our hospital is just north of that culvert crossing, yes ma'am.
Okay.
All that water flows from uptown, right?
From where we're sitting,
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Right
That's where it
down in
flows
here,
from.
actually right there is Lampkin, if I've got myself situated right.
I know where it flows from.
And qualify that, we got utility maps in this area, but we did not get these in time down here. So there may be some minor discharges out of this drainage basin that we're looking at here, but it's not going to be to a significant amount to really alter the numbers that we came up with. Again, those pipes were undersized, and to let you know, the pipe at Reed Road was undersized also for 100-year. Inefficient culverts cause headwaters to overtop Carver and Hiwassee. Flooding extends into private properties. And the previous alterations to that drainage way will cause the city to file a LOMR with FEMA. This is a schematic of the flooding that can be expected. This is a low-lying area here, so when Reed Road backs up, this area is going to be inundated. The good thing is there's less residential impact over in there. And then, of course, as this water backs up, it causes all of this to back up. But then again, the majority of the issue is this culvert right here at Hiwassee gets over top, floods Carver, and it's going to spill over into the residences. This pipe also is undersized. It will be overtopped with its headwater, and it will contribute to that inundation of those private areas as well.
That's on 100 years.
Yes, sir, this is 100 year. This study here strictly looked at 100 years, because when you think was involved, that's basically what we need to hold to. This is a blow up. Get you a little bit closer, kind of see what it is. I apologize for the blurry back image. There is some impact to these residential areas here and some over here, but most of it was more or less virgin land or undeveloped area. And then here's an impact at Carver. Questions on that? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I was going to raise them at the end. Now, just a few questions at this point.
Sure.
Now, you did a 100-year study of Carver, but with Maple, you did a 25-year study and a 100-year study, and then the gentleman from Ward 7 here asked you, would it accommodate a 25-year event? You said it would accommodate a 25-year event based upon your opinion.
I would expect it to be close. I think it would, yes.
Now, also, you said that the covers that they are undersized. Now, you're talking about all of the covers that go from Hiwassee to where it stopped at. In other words, that the covers are undersized. That's the pipes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is the pipes.
Okay, so are you telling us that all of the pipes that are in the ground from that drainage with the top on right there at Cargo, if you're coming from hospital, you come down to the stop sign, so it's right there. So you said all those pipes in the ground going to the west of those homes toward Reed Road, all that pipe is undersized.
What we have found is the 60-inch diameter RCP right there at the crossing of Hiwassee is undersized, and the 66-inch that was installed in the creek bed at some time in the past was undersized.
Okay, let me make sure I'm clear because I'm not an engineer. So what I'm saying is okay, listen carefully. Are all of the pipes that are in the ground from Hiwassee to the point of last installation, are all of those pipes undersized?
If you're trying to include the storm drainage that's in Carver, I can't speak to that.
Okay, well,
I
what
do
do you
know that this section of RCP right here, the 60-inch diameter that crosses from east of Hiwassee or Carver across into this open head wall area here is undersized.
Okay.
And then the 66 that picks up at that open head wall all the way to the end of it is undersized.
Okay, so the part that go to the east, now you're not talking across Hiwassee over there by the nursing home, are you?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay,
Our study is basically focused on this area.
Okay, so at the beginning point of it is oversized, then a distance to the, and when I say to the west, that's toward Reed Road, a portion of that pipe is undersized.
Yes, sir. This entire portion, starting at the crossing here,
And going
and
down.
all the way to here,
Right
is
now.
undersized.
Now, based upon your work there, now those pipes were just installed within the last year or two. Now, so you're representing to me and the board and the mayor that those pipes are undersized, that was done within the last couple of years?
For a 100-year event, they are, yes, sir, from our calculations.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, let me yield now. But for a 25-year event, they are not undersized. Is that your
If I had
opinion?
the actual numbers, I could tell you, but I don't think they would be undersized for a 25-year event.
Okay, but they're only undersized for a 100-year event.
That is correct.
So, and you're gonna get to some conclusion on this report here? Because I hadn't seen your study, I just saw it.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Basically, and the reason we focused on the 100-year event.
1 second.
Sure.
It is noteworthy that not all of that pipe was installed over the last year.
I know when it was installed, Mayor.
Edward, can you give us a brief history on the pipe? Which portion was installed last year, and which portion was installed at a time
Can I ask a question
frame of
before you start that? From what I understand about water, and it's not very much, other than that it's a very powerful force, when you start out with a pipe of a certain diameter, can you change that? You really are limited there. I mean, can you go up or down? You can't go down, obviously, I would think.
You can expand, you can contract, but basically your smallest size in the run is kind of the controlling point. It would not, if I could kind of project from what your thought process is there, it does not behoove us at all to start a larger section of pipe downstream
Okay,
of this.
I think that's what my question was.
You're still going to have the headwater condition at the upstream end of those pipes.
Now, Edward, if you could, starting at Hiawassee, show us which portion was installed last year and what was installed prior to that.
Mayor, the last section that was installed, which I believe was the summer of 2010, was 40 feet. Currently, I believe there's 600 feet in there.
It's 4 something.
400
About
or something.
460, 450, something like that.
400 to 500 feet in there currently. The last 40 feet was installed in the summer of 2010, I believe. All the pipe before that predates me, and so I'm not exactly sure when that was installed. I believe it was installed in phases. I don't believe that entire remainder, 400 feet or 360 feet was installed at one time. Alderman Perkins or Alderman Corey may remember that from previous board.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Engineer. Now, the pipe that we have in that ditch so far on Carver Drive, Mr. Engineer, is that the same pipe that we got over there on that King Park? And that was before your time, but that's that whole ditch coming from Hilliard by the little kid swimming pool all the way down to the where the walking track, all the way down there where the football field was. Is that the same pipe that was there? I think Mr. Webb used that same, because I went out there daily and saw that pipe. And the reason I'm asking that, Mr. Engineer, Mr. Consultant, are you familiar with that pipe there that we use? Because we have that pipe been in there at least for 18 years. But are you familiar with that?
I have a cursory knowledge of that one. I've never done any kind of study in that area, obviously.
Alderman, I'm not sure of the size of that. I am aware of the approximate alignment of where it goes under the football field and ties back in on the other side of Mosley Drive. That whole section under the park is underground and comes back open where it turns into riprap sides.
Right.
But I'm not exactly sure what size that is.
Because in talking, my recollection with Mr. Webb, that's the same type pipe that we did to cover that ditch back in around 93, 94 time. With that big open ditch, it was just as wide and width as the Carver Drive ditch, and they cover that with that pipe. We haven't had any problem with that, so I just want to make sure make you aware of that as we get to.
What, do you mind?
Go ahead.
Also, at the pipe you're talking about, and let me make sure, it's a pipe that's more down here in the park, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're also draining less area into that pipe, so you could have a smaller pipe there. Once you get to here, we're getting a lot of the water. We're taking this water that's in this pipe.
Okay.
And trying to get it to the pipe of the same size.
Okay, I'll just wait until he can see what your recommendations are.
We were not actually asked to prepare several concepts to solve the flooding issue in this area. I want to make sure that's clear. If I didn't spell that out, I apologize.
So you're going to show us something, but there are other options?
There are,
in addition?
yeah. On this one, we have definitely not done an exhaustive study on what options would work best.
Okay.
You have a wide array we could chase, but we will show you some that will work. Obviously, we need to increase capacity in this area. The 66-inch is not quite enough. It needs to be beefed up. You could remove those pipes and replace them with an altogether larger section. You could add pipe to that 66-inch to increase its conveyance in that area. Or you could remove that and reestablish the natural ditch section that was there. Now, let's qualify that. You will never get back to a natural ditch. It will be more of a man-made geometric section that runs through there. You have basically disrupted that natural course that was there. You can't get back to it now. So it will be more or less kind of like the riprap section in that area, just as a kind of a guideline of what you might be looking at.
So you're giving the board an opinion here tonight, based upon your recommendation, your investigation report, that we should not continue with covering the ditch. Is that what you're telling us?
if you're gonna continue covering with the ditch, you need to fix the upstream problems and then use the correct size going downstream from there.
Well, I mean, Mr. Engineer, I mean,
That is our recommendation.
I understand that.
Yes,
My job is to ask questions, okay?
No,
You
no,
have a
that's
job.
fine.
Okay, now, I'm trying to figure out, in listening to you, have we experienced some type of problem or just your opinion? I mean, with the pipe that's there to saying that we got to remove the existing pipe? I mean, you know, it's been hard enough to get 40 feet at a time. I mean, you're talking about removing
Yes,
pipe. I
yes.
mean, I don't see hold on a minute. I don't see that's happening. I mean, I'm just going to just talk as straight as an arrow to you. So
No.
I want to hear from you. Do you have a professional opinion as to continuing the pipe in the ditch as it is and covering the ditch up?
Professional opinion on continuing to cover the ditch.
Pipe and cover.
And continue the 66-inch section as
What
it is right now.
Whatever is in there now. And,
I think, I don't know the extent of flooding per se, but I think you could get into a public safety issue with flooding the residences in that area.
do you have any evidence of flooding there now?
No, sir, and as I understand it, there is no history of flooding in that ditch, so to speak. But if you run the engineering calculations, which we were asked to do, it proves there could be flooding in that area.
Well, if you have no evidence of flooding, then how is that an issue? I mean, what objective data do you have to convince us that if there's no evidence of flooding, that there's a flooding issue?
As a professional engineer, using the standard calculations we've used for every hydraulic study and design that we do, we have proven there could be flooding in this area.
Could another option would be to pick up from where we are with the existing pipe and from an engineering point of view, have the capacity of pipes to go, because it's the intent of the board not to go all the way over to Reed Road. That's the intent of the board at the last decision, was just go to the last house there that exists there at Carver Drive. So could we increase the size of the pipe there? And the city can move forward as it deems necessary, but we increase the size of the pipe and cover the ditch from the point where we last stopped.
If you increase the size of the pipe from where you are now, you have not solved the upstream issue. It's
So-
kind of like if you take an 8-inch pipe and at some point down the middle of it, you neck it down to 4, you can't push any more but through that one little section of 4-inch pipe.
So you tell me we can't do that, what I'm saying?
You would have to address the upstream issue.
I mean, when you say upstream, I'm sorry, you mean what we already done?
Yes, with the existing 66-inch pipe, that is, by our calculations, undersized, would need to be addressed before you improve anything downstream.
Okay,
Would be
one-
my recommendation.
Okay, one last thing, I'm not trying to prolong this. Okay,
No.
what could we do other than to remove the pipe? And I'm sorry about all the questions, I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Yes,
I mean, I'm trying to get a project done, which is taking an act of Congress to get done. I mean, you know, an act of
Yes.
Congress still won't make it happen.
yes.
Okay, so, I'm not interested in taking up no pipe. Hold a minute, you're the engineer now, you got to figure this out for me now. I mean, I wanna keep the pipe there, and I wanna finish this ditch. So how do I do it, engineer?
Some concepts I'm gonna show you in a minute, because, and the mindset I took from it when I started trying to figure out some concepts that may help the area, was the city has spent the money to lay 450 foot of pipe. So let's use what is there and improve upon that condition to make it work. Because at some point, somebody made the capital decision to put that length of pipe in there. And 66 corrugated metal pipe is not cheap. That size goes for a pretty good price. So one concept would be to keep it and add pipes alongside it. Kind of like a multiple barrel situation. So, does that help clarify?
Go ahead, I heard you.
And one of them is to replace that culvert crossing from Wassey with a box culvert, and then add a 60-inch pipe alongside the 66 that is there now. Now, you cannot use your standard corrugated metal pipe. The friction developed inside the pipe is too high. You're going to have to use something more on the order of something with a smooth barrel. 60, I don't know if you can truly get a plastic pipe for that, but you could get what they consider a smooth lined corrugated metal pipe, or you could go with concrete, obviously being a more expensive option. But with that option, if you can see the light shading, you're pretty much going to be confining the flooding to the ditch area itself, or to tributary 2. That is one option. The other option would be to keep the 60 as we propose, and do not put the 10 by 5 box culvert, but replace that with 2 54-inch culverts alongside the existing 60. And again, you see the shading there to kind of show the flooding. As you'll notice on this one, we do overtop the back of curb in this area, but it's low enough that we think the first set of inlets would pick it up. If not there, this set of inlets here would definitely capture the flood. So we're looking at flooding public land here, a little corner of that private, and then staying within, or relatively within, the ditch along tributary 2.
So just to clarify, the flooding concern with existing conditions is not west of the outfall of the pipe. It's the backup at Hiwassee.
Yes, sir.
And the overtopping of Hiwassee that would then flow west.
Yes, sir.
Over land. Okay.
What our calculation showed was, yeah, you get some topping at Reed Road, the ditch culvert, but the channels that lead us up to the down, or the outfall of that 66 function relatively well. There is some overtopping of the bank, but at a 100-year flood event, you're looking for that anyway. But it is minimized. It's not extensively spread out like we've seen with the pipe conditions we have.
But the major flooding on Carver is caused by the choke point of Hiwassee Road.
Yes, sir.
That would overtop and then inundate from the east.
This large natural channel that used to be there, you forced into a barrel. And granted, it is a large pipe, but all pipes have a capacity that can be reached. And in this case, it's reached and has nowhere to go but down Carver, which is kind of on par with the top of the bank in that area, as far as elevation is concerned. Now, the other alternate, depending on pipe prices, would be to keep the 66 and put 42s on each side of it, basically run a double barrel down each side of it. And then again, these were both analyzed for the box culvert here or the double 54 crossing. Again, you see there's some light flooding right here at the intersection. And on alternate 4, which would be the double barrel with the double barrel also in Hiwassee, you get some more flooding still contained within that small area. Those are solutions we came up with that would keep the 66 in place.
So
we did not run numbers to see. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm sorry.
But we did not actually analyze the benefits or effects of opening that channel back up and getting back to kind of what it used to be at some point in the past. Yes.
So we would need to decide what course of action we're going to take before you can submit your information to FEMA for a letter map revision?
Yes, sir, for a LOMR.
Okay.
You basically get conditional approval based on what we submit with the direction the city would like to take. And once that's built and our company certifies it's been built according to the plan, then your final LOMR or your final certification on that LOMR would come through.
Mr. Mayor, what I would like to see, I would like to have some cost estimates on this so we can just review them, analyze them, discuss them to see whether or not, how we're going to proceed. Certainly a strong interest on covering the ditch, but we've heard from the engineer and staff tonight, but if we can get some cost estimates back at the next available opportunity once that can be done, so we can give some, because we got to have this first and got to decide something before we can go to FEMA, before we can do anything else on this ditch, right?
Yes, sir.
And the clock is running. We've been at a stop sign a long time. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see that happen. If we, whenever we can reasonably get that back, I think there's a prudent request to see exactly what's going to be the cost, and because the board going to be interested in that.
I can have the city engineer work up cost estimates for all 4 of these alternatives as well as the 2 alternatives for Maple Drive. Edward, do you think you can do that by the next meeting?
Yes, sir. Okay. That's good, Mayor. That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments?
I'm sorry. I just want to be sure I'm understanding. It is the Hiwassee Inlet that's creating the flooding problems, not
Yes.
what's happening at the end of the pipe that's currently in the ground.
Yes, ma'am, it is basically the intake or the inlet side of that culvert. Where that ditch comes in from over here into there. That is definitely a point where it's choking down, and again, also in here. But yes, both upstream ends of those pipes in that area are basically the source of flooding.
It's not a question more than a comment, but you know, you hear about the 25-year event and the 100-year, and I mean, this is, Maple Drive is flooded. I've only been in office 2 years, and I know 4 or 5 times, literally in the house, so, you know, I mean, is that the lowest you go is 25-year flood? You got a 10-year flood?
You have a 10, a 5,
Okay.
a 2,
Yeah.
50. You basically, engineers who love their numbers have come up with several different statistical
Right.
storms that you can analyze. FEMA kind of based on the worst case scenario of 100. Now there are storms that are more extreme than 100, but they focus on the 100. From a design standpoint, we go with either what the city requires or somewhere around the 10 to 25 range, depending on the impact it could have.
So you're going to be.
Because if you design to 100, you're sitting there and you're at 1% chance a year that that thing operates the way it's supposed to is very expensive for the hundreds of small storms.
Right.
You're overbuilding.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
It's a huge overdesign.
Again, just I started off with that. Thank you for doing this. I know
You're
we've been needing this, so.
We appreciate the opportunity.
I got one question. Will
Yes.
FEMA approve 25 year?
No, sir.
I got to be
No,
100.
your firm maps, if you go and ask for a firm in any area, it's based on a 100-year flood. All their calculations are based on that. So you can give them the 25 and they're going to say, that's good work, come back with the 100.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And Jason, good to see you here. I report with Jason, y'all.
It's in CMT.
Yes, of course.
Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Could we take a recess, man?
We can. Without objection, we'll move it up, brief recess. Any objection? Seeing none, stand in recess. The next matter before us is a report from the city clerk on the process and timeline for transition to the new software.
The Encode software that we were trying to get implemented, we've received all necessary components, and the IT department has installed and have us now on with the server, the city's server. We had a separate server, and now we're on with the city's server. So all of that hardware is in place. The Talent Technology will start training at the end of this month. We'll do our financial conversion and fixed asset conversion first. And then in the first part of November, we'll do personnel management, and in the week of the 21st of November, we'll do financial, and the rest of personnel management is more like the analyst part, or the programs part. And they're looking at midway in December as our, as a midway point for us. So December will be halfway there, and we'll start back up in January. And from there, they'll give us another schedule for January forward to finish out.
Do you have any idea how much longer after January before you make that final conversion?
Probably the end of February, first part of March.
Excellent. Okay. I think we're looking forward to it, but I'm sure y'all are as well.
Oh, yes.
Any further questions or comments for the city clerk? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll now hear a report from the Chief Administrative Officer on recommendations from the analysis of the West Side Drive parking concerns.
Mayor and Board, at the last meeting, I was requested to do a little research on Mr. Purnell's concerns about his ability to park on the street, his request that the city consider making West Side Drive a one-way street. And in an attempt to do as thorough a job as I know how, Mr. Kemp and I went out and rode the street. They probably thought they ought to call the police on us. We cruised up and down several times and parked and took measurements and did a number of just drives through the area. And then I went back out on my own a few days later and did much the same thing just to see what the traffic flow was like. And we looked at the distance from each point of the outlet going on West Side if you were to go east, if you were to go west and create a one-way going either of those directions. I spoke with the fire chief, I spoke with the police chief, and the bottom line, I've given you about a 6-page report here. The bottom line is in essence that I would not, based on what I learned, recommend one way. What I do recommend is that we look at the possibility of creating speed tables in the area of these particular residents' homes. There are 4 residences that actually face West Side Drive. The remainder of them are off of North Side, and North Side is a U shape and it dumps into West Side. So those folks would be the ones most impacted by any change going one way. You have zoning that is R2, and you have C2 zoning, C1 zoning, I'm sorry, R6 and C1 zoning. You have Brickfire project, which is on West Side. On the north side, you have a convenience store that's at the corner of Long on West Side, and all of those would be impacted by the traffic were it to go to the west. The fire chief was most concerned that he would not have access because the secondary response would be coming from the west, going toward, going to the east, and of course your primary response would probably be coming from Station 3, which would come and go from east to west. So he would have an issue with having emergency response there. That particular road is an east-west access for cemetery, school, the convenience store, the park. There's a number of access points or access elements there that people are wanting to travel to. And unless you travel Hospital or unless you travel 182, your major point is going to be West Side Drive. So the convenience factor for the remainder of the residents was a concern. My recommendation would be the speed tables and to provide sidewalks in the capital improvement plan, which we currently do not have. Mr. Kemp did an estimate of the costs associated with sidewalks, with increasing a lane and the cost to widen West Side, and then to install a shoulder that would allow some parking. All of those, beginning with the installation of a sidewalk, $165,000 roughly. That would be on the north side. Cost to widen West Side is approximately $200,000, and the cost to install a shoulder that would allow parking on West Side is approximately $100,000.
What'd you say the sidewalk was?
The sidewalk was $165,000.
Now, Ms. Rule, now that sidewalk, now that's not from Reed to Frontier, that's from Reed to Long.
That's Reed to Long, yes, that's correct.
Reed to Long.
And the reason you didn't give, I'm just asking, just for information purposes, could you just also give us a cost at some point from, I mean, not against that, but I'm thinking, could you also give us an option from Frontier to Reed?
Well, and I had asked Mr. Kemp that, and because I assumed, because there were sidewalks on the south side.
It's
of
on the
West
south side, you're right.
Yes.
Right.
That we would just put sidewalks on the north side of West Side, and Mr. Kemp said no, that he had done it all the way from Long to Reed, because there is a danger associated, particularly at Frontier where the hill is, there's a danger with that crossing if you were to set it up so that people would have to cross the street to go to a sidewalk. But we could certainly provide an estimate. The reason for not doing it on the south side, so that it's continuous flow on the south side, was because he said it was so cost prohibitive. It was obviously even more than the $200,000, which is your top estimate here, because of the topographical changes. You'd have to do retaining walls and make some serious cuts in the property in order to create a sidewalk on the south side.
Define table.
Sir?
Define those,
Speed
speed tables. Define
Oh.
the speed tables.
Define them?
Yeah, what?
Hawassi,
has speed tables. They're not bumps. They're not going to jar your front end out of alignment. They are a gentle way to get up, and they don't impede the ability of the fire trucks or the school buses or the larger vehicles to go across them. They just will slow you down.
And you say you would install them in front of all four of those houses?
Well,
Two?
obviously, from an engineering standpoint, you would want to flank probably either one of those houses, but that would be something that the engineer would need to look at associated with the ingress and egress of Northside Drive and Frontier, and all of that would need to be taken into account with the thought that it would slow the traffic down. But none of that addresses Mr. Purnell's interest in parking in front of his home. That was one of the issues that he had brought up, was that traffic was speeding, that there were no sidewalks, and so I wanted to discuss that or address that in my report.
No, that didn't address it on his issue.
Sir?
No, that didn't address any of his issues.
No, it did not. Well, it didn't address his parking in front of his house, but he mentioned speeding and no sidewalks, and so I wanted to at least be able to address those two items.
This all started, the gentleman was previously parking on the street, right? And then there were no parking signs put in, and that's what started this, right? That's what drove this?
My understanding of the history is that we overlaid the street. The street was then striped. And yes, he's been parking on the street. I don't know for how long. I'm not familiar with that. I don't know what our enforcement has been over the years from the police department in that.
Let me ask, we just had a pretty lengthy conversation, but he's been parking on the street for 30-some-odd plus years. And then in the restriping, the signs were put in, does that just come with restriping? Anytime you find a missing sign, is that when you replace it?
Well, they put it in for traffic control purposes. Chief, can you assist me in that in terms of the double striping? And were we not enforcing any on-street parking prior to this?
It's changed. At one time, there was no parking, at one time, it was parking allowed. It's changed over the years.
Off and on over the years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. And I'm not familiar with that history and the way that's worked.
Let's go back and forth.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a gentleman or a lady, they can park anywhere on any, streets are public, right? If I want to pull my truck up in front of your house, I can leave it on the street indefinitely, right? As long as it cranked, is what I've been told by the code enforcement
Well,
officer.
if you're blocking a lane of traffic, I don't think that's an option.
Or there might be neighborhood covenants against parking on the street. Not in this case, I'm assuming, but.
Well, I mean, you could certainly have neighborhood covenants.
It's not enforceable by.
Right.
Well, the problem with West Side Drive is simple. It's not wide enough to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic and parking.
So that,
Impossible.
okay, so I haven't been down west, and I guess that's what I'm leading to. When you put the stripes down, it made everybody recognize that the street.
The double yellow lines you put there because it approaches the Crescent Hill.
Right.
West Side Drive has become an improved traffic artery that, as Ms. Brule alluded to, is one of your main cut-throughs for that section of town. And when it was paved, of course, that increases speed. When you stripe the street, that increases speed because it makes people feel more secure in their ability. If you added fog lines on the sides, that would increase speed. But there is not enough room as it stands now for 2 lanes of traffic and parking. And the parking that was allowed there in the past created a situation where people had to go around, park cars, and put them in peril of a head-on collision under the crest of that hill in front of them. That's it.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board?
I got one question. Mr. Parnell, will it, if we install the speed table, I know that not what you wanted or what you want to hear, but will that relieve some of this while we do some continuing investigation on this?
Well, if you install the speed tables, that's not solving the problem that my neighbors and I have. The problem that my neighbors and I have is being able to receive visitors. Okay, it goes back, like the chief said, way back when Larry Sis was the chief, same situation. They came out, they put the signs down, meant no parking. I came up here, we discussed this thing when Alderman Perkins was over that ward. We discussed this thing. The chief idea was to come out, pull the signs up, move the signs, and gave us a distance to park from our home to the corner of the next house. As long as we didn't get any further than the next house, which is getting closer to the top of the hill, we was okay, and parked right upside the curb. Actually, we walked that thing off when it wasn't a line out there. You could put my car right upside the curb and bring two cars at the same time right by my car on that same street. It hadn't been widened out at all. It's the very same street. You could do that then, but now you got the double yellow lines out there, and people are obeying those double yellow lines, and they're riding the curve, and that leaves no room for pedestrians. When my car was out there, pedestrians would walk behind my car, and that was their safety. Now they has to walk up an empty lane, which cars are zooming by at all times. So, you know, we just looking to be able to, you know, have visitors at our house. You know, if you're paying taxes, you want to be able to say, hey, you know, come by and watch the football game, come by and have dinner, just like you guys, you know, and that's all we're looking for. You know, some type of solution like that, you know. I realize that, you know, I hear that all the time about the city don't have enough money for this, the city don't have enough money for that. But this problem right here was just created. We didn't have this problem. That's the same thing about if pedestrians are walking out there like kids or pushing babies and strollers up that street. You gotta go around those people over that yellow line and go around those people or run over them. You still gotta cross that yellow line and dodge the pedestrians. So you got a problem there, you know. When the cars was parked out there, they would stop behind my car. And that car was coming up the road, it would stop, and everybody would go around my car. Now my car's up on the hill in my yard, which leaves nowhere for my kids to park to come visit my wife and I, and everybody is zooming up and down the street. You know, it's not only the speed, it's being able to have visitors at our homes, you know. The one-way issue was just an idea. I discussed that same idea with our chief, sis. The same idea, I brought that up then. You know, he thought it might have been a good idea too, but we got back to the issue where it's that the city didn't have enough money to do this. We never had a sidewalk. We never had anybody to get, a pedestrian to get ran over. We never had a head-on collision there. But now we have a problem where it's that the signs are back down in the street, on side of the street, and we can't have visitors at our home. And I really don't think that's right, because we are taxpayers, and right now my taxes are $600–700 right now. And you're telling me that, well, my sister or my kids can't visit me because they don't have anywhere to park. And then you ask me to park, well, can they park around the corner? No, because somebody else lives around the corner, you're taking up their parking space. So what are we to do when we have company, like on the holidays are coming up, what are we to do? Tell our company that we can't have company, we can't have this because we have nowhere for them to park? You know, we're just looking for some type of solution. We're not trying to create a problem here. We're trying to solve a problem that was put there when they put the signs down. We appreciate the street being paved. The yellow lines, it didn't really make a difference. But a problem was created simply because we can't park at home. Like I said last time I was here, my wife had just come up here and paid a ticket for parking at home because she couldn't get in the driveway because my girls was visiting. So she had to park on the street in front of the house. And she got a ticket. She came up here, she paid that ticket. And that's really ridiculous to get a ticket for parking in front of your own house. You know, but we paid that ticket. And we brought this thing to the city to see if we can get some type of solution here. You know, if you say you're gonna expand the street or put a sidewalk over there, whatever you're gonna do, how many years are you talking about? How many years do we have to say, well, you can't come to see your dad or your mom because you don't have anywhere to park? How long do we have to go like that? That is my question. And I'm sorry for, you know, taking up this amount of time that I've taken up, but we're just looking for a solution, that's all. Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board?
One, you know, that's addressing, I'm gonna be honest and tell you my opinion. Parking on the street's probably gonna cost, now that they have striped it, you don't need to probably do that. And that no parking will put up, and I can understand Chief's side on that. So, from a safety standpoint, if that many people, because there is no sidewalk, I don't know, maybe we can address, is there any kind of something, a little more temporary gravel, you know, maybe some kind of parking area for them or some kind of concrete parking? Has the city ever gotten into that business, providing the safety for You know, it sounds like he
You
didn't
couldn't
have
build
enough-
something specifically for parking, you know,
Right.
because you would run into impermissible donation issues.
Oh, okay. Just kind of between a rock and a hard place because you don't have enough parking. How many parking spots do you have?
When this issue came up a few years ago, like I say, when Chief Sis was in office, I took the time out and spent money to dig a hole in my yard to make a driveway to put my wife's car and my car. I did that. My neighbors did the same thing. They created driveways because the driveways that came with the homes are too steep in the air to park anything upon. So we created places to park when this issue came up the last time. Now we're facing it again, and we don't have very much yard. We don't have 2 or 3 acres of yard. We only have a house seat. So where am I to dig this time?
How many spots are you operating off of right now?
2. In my yard, what little yard I have, I put my vehicles up there. For instance, I drive a Suburban. I parked my Suburban on the hill in my yard. I'm pretty sure if anybody came out and looked this thing over, you seen a blue and gray Suburban on the hill. I parked my Suburban on the hill.
Right.
When it rains, my Suburban is parked on the hill. I can't leave home because I can't get it down. If the rain catch me up here in my Suburban, I can't get my Suburban up the hill out of the street. But I gotta go home. I mean, I understand that it's a tough situation, but,
Right.
you know, it can be fixed. You know, it can be fixed. And I ride all over town, and I see situations worse than my situation. Busier spots than my spot, you know. But they don't have this type of problem.
So you can't just extend a roadway for a portion? That's municipal
If you're
donation to
extending
parking?
it for a public purpose like travel of vehicles, you can. You just can't build something that would be to service parking only at somebody's home.
Right.
Further questions?
Ms. Brewer, Chief Linda, the parking situation when it's the daughters of the family there, what can we do, Ms. Brewer?
Well,
Chief?
actually, to Mr. Purnell's credit, he did excavate enough area for 2 cars to park in that section. He also has a driveway, and if you put the emergency brake on, there's no reason that 2 cars can't park on that driveway. So that's 4. He parks over on the side of his road where the Suburban is, so that's 5. There's actually some space in front of that vehicle, so, and I took 8 by 10 photographs of this, and we measured the street, and y'all should have all that. But Mr. Purnell can actually have 6 vehicles off-street at his house. And I don't know whether that's sufficient to meet his demands or not, but if he has more need than 6 vehicles parked on his property, then he has about 25 yards up the street, another street around the corner where people can park. So he should be able to have a substantial gathering at his house and not be affected. It's just might be a little inconvenience, but obviously this isn't, solving the problem of no sidewalk, but the parking itself, he has room for 6 vehicles right now.
Frontier Street, north side, east and west, and then the area of Brickfire. If you were having a party after Brickfire hours, which I think is 5:30 or 6, the Brickfire parking lot would be available, and it's just down the street. The parking lot of, or the JL Long area, you could park along the street there by the park and walk up. So if you were having a large gathering, it would not be, lots of people park long distances for parties and, from homes and will walk up. But on a day-to-day basis, I believe Mr. Purnell does have 5 spaces that he can use from a day-to-day standpoint. A party is a different thing altogether. At anyone's home, a party is a different thing. And end up parking down the street or further away from your destination house.
Are there any other precedents in residential zoning where the city provides parking?
Provides parking?
You mean
No.
provides parking exclusively or provides parking as part of the street?
Either or, because I'm not privy of a residential area where it's a public street that within the right of way in residential zoning that we provide designated parking either.
Sure. For instance, we just striped a section of South Washington Street. Street parking is permissible all over town. It just depends on whether the street is wide enough to accommodate street
And where's,
parking.
and that's residential?
Well, it is a
It all is
fairly residential area. There's some non-residential uses, but there's a lot of residential there as well. Further questions and comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
I just say this is a tough one.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I say one more thing?
You may, but we're gonna have to wrap it up after
Yes,
this.
sir. Let me say this right here. My home is not a home for parking. My kids, everybody in my house has a vehicle. And if you park your vehicle like the chief requested that we park, you need a transmission. My truck needs a transmission in now, $1,500 transmission for my truck. Right now, from parking up and down up on that hill. You cannot park two vehicles straight. Come by there tomorrow, sit on my porch with me, have a donut and some coffee. I can show it to you, you can see it. You cannot park two vehicles, three vehicles up the hill straight up toward my house like that. You cannot. My transmission, like I say, is stored in my truck. What are we supposed to do, just keep tagging the transmission?
And just like me, I live over there. I have 7 children. And my children don't have nowhere to park when they come to see me.
Thank you. Any further questions and comments from the members of the board? Are there any further questions and comments from the members of the board?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor. Until we get this, I'll suggest that we look at putting the speed tables there until we try to find something different and continue to study this because it is.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion for the city to install speed tables as designated by the city engineer and for the city to continue to study the parking situation on West Side Drive. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Carter.
Any reason for that number?
You mean 2?
Any reason? I mean, is that
It was
versus
an
4?
arbitrary, it was just a recommendation. If you did, the intent is to slow traffic down. You have 4 houses only, and if you were to, and I don't know from a spacing standpoint, because you don't want to, put one in front of Frontier Drive, for example. You don't want to put one in front of Northside, so you just have to look and see where the best spacing would be for that, and 2 seem to me to be either that or you're doing this, so.
And the motion doesn't actually specify a number.
No.
The engineer would go and
Okay.
it would be at his discretion.
Ms. Rule, I know the ones on Hawaii are very effective. They did a good
Yes, they
job with
are.
those.
Good.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Vaughn's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Thank you, Mr. Rule.
Mr. Mayor, I got one more motion
Yes.
on this one. Also, it's recommended to add sidewalks in the capital improvement plan for coming up year.
So the motion would be
add.
for sidewalks to be considered as part of the capital improvement plan for
West Side Drive.
the upcoming, that sidewalks on West Side Drive will be considered as part of the capital improvement plan for the upcoming year. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is a report from the Budget Committee. Alderman Sistrunk?
I'll keep this very brief because it is getting late and we've got quite a bit of work left to do. But the Budget Committee met this afternoon. We talked briefly about where we are at the end of fiscal year 11, unaudited numbers. We talked about scheduling the audit so that we would have finalized numbers for what's available in the general fund for the beginning of the next year. And we set a standing meeting time. It was a fairly routine budget meeting, just an attempt to stay on track and meet regularly.
Any questions or comments for Alderman Sistrunk? Do we have any questions or comments for Alderman Sistrunk? Any questions or comments for Alderman Sistrunk? All right, seeing none, the next matter on the agenda, y'all might have to give
Personnel
me
one.
Personnel
one.
Goes all the way to
Personnel one.
Fire
No,
department.
it's the
Personnel
consideration of the fire department claims document. We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to approve of the fire department claims docket as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is a request to approve hiring a temporary deputy clerk. Mr. Boyd?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Rook, I understand that you want to, I'm going to make a motion, I need to answer this question, I think I'm clear on it. You want to hire a temporary person only to fill in the absence of the full-time employee who's on family medical leave. That's correct, sir. Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we hire a temporary employee to fill in as a deputy court clerk in the municipal court office at a rate of $10.73 per hour, grade 7, step 1, without benefits, and said temporary employee shall be hired until the full-time employee in question return to work from family medical leave. That's my motion.
All right.
I'll
hold on.
restate that so you get it. I move that we hire a temporary employee to fill in as a deputy court clerk in the municipal court office at a rate of $10.73 per hour, grade 7, step 1, without benefits, and said temporary employee shall be hired until the full-time employee in question return to work from family medical leave. That's my motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right. The motion is to hire a temporary employee to fill in for a full-time employee to serve as a deputy clerk for the municipal court. And this person is to be hired at an hourly rate of $10.73, grade 7, step 1, without benefits, until the full-time employee that fills this position returns from family medical leave. Alderman Perkins, is that your motion?
You did a good job.
Appreciate it. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Perkins, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Perkins' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we move into closed session, please.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion that we move into closed session for a determination of whether there is a need to move into executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Perkins, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Now may I ask that the room be cleared while we move into, at least informally, stated an intent to move forward by the 27th now. So there is some form of notice out there, and then you make the official adoption of the resolution, putting the issue on the ballot on the 16th. It doesn't look like it jeopardizes your ability to actually have it on the 27th. So I just throw that out there or something. And of course, it is something we could always have a special call on as well.
If I could go back just a minute to the concept of the master plan, barring whatever glitch we have with that table, I think it's a terrific document, and it sets us on a path toward doing some really good things for that part of the city and some really good things for our municipal complexes. I'd also like to really commend the idea of using what is just the management of stormwater to create an amenity at incremental cost. It will really cost us very little, if anything, more than just managing our stormwater, and we wind up with a very nice feature downtown.
The master planning document is elegant and I think does a brilliant job of encapsulating 18 months worth of work. Yeah, I wouldn't change one thing associated with the master planning document except for revising that second table of figures, because I think it's important to make sure you've got the correct tax figures for that second phase of the project.
Well, and there were two trains of thoughts on that. I mean, it was the idea of showing it cumulative versus the idea of just showing it simply as what it would increase only with the action of phase 2 versus what it was with phase 1. I mean, they're real numbers, and I think when you begin to add it up, it does incrementally make a big difference. But again, I don't want to get lost in the idea that phase 2, whether cumulative or not, I think those.
It is phase 2.
It is phase 2.
And it happens later.
Yeah, and because I got to tell you, I mean, I was really encouraged by the end of the town hall. Frankly, I walked into the town hall with not much optimism on what the citizens' comments would be in relation to this whole project. And it was just based on everything that I had heard with the school bond issue, with the hospital bond issue, with county taxes, with all the different things they were. But I was very much impressed with the diverse people that came up to me and said how overwhelmingly supportive they were of the police complex. Now, there were immediate questions of what would happen with phase 2, of how that would be phased, when it would be phased, would we trigger it immediately, would we go into it 5 years from now? Well, 5 years from now is a different administration. It's unfair for us to assume what will happen, frankly, tomorrow. But the idea being that everyone that I've talked to realizes the need from a phasing standpoint of looking at these. The plans are the plans. I mean, and I feel and again, I stand by the numbers based on what, again.
On this worksheet.
On the worksheet. And I'm no financial expert by any means. Never have claimed to be. You can ask my wife. But the idea being that I personally think there's some real timeliness to how this thing triggers and when it triggers.
Mayor, may I be recognized for a minute?
You may.
I want to talk about the pre-clearance issue a little bit more. Whether there is a protest or whether the board goes straight to an election, pre-clearance has to be done pursuant to the Department of Justice. And the timeline for pre-clearance is 60 days. So the 60-day window starts with the board's resolution tonight and goes out to give the Department of Justice time to investigate and make a ruling on whether this election is pre-cleared. As a practical matter, municipalities struggle with that 60-day deadline. The election often beats the 60 days. That's why the term post-pre-clearance comes into play. As a practical matter, the Department of Justice also often gives the municipality guidance early in that process about whether there's a problem or not. And if they say there's not a problem, the election goes forward and the pre-clearance comes on the back end and everything's okay. I just want to state for the record that I can't say with absolute certainty that if we don't act tonight and we do act on August 16th and we try to have an election on September 27th, that time frame would not be so compressed that it gets us in trouble with pre-clearance.
What do you think? Well, because we've always had the elections prior to getting clearance from the Justice Department, and when we're not changing anything as far as our polling places,
I don't think there'll be a problem, but I just didn't want to go on record saying that there would be no problem, because that time frame to me is just very tight.
And either rate, whether we do it tonight, it's still tight.
I agree with that.
I think it's very important that we have this to be as not only accurate, but also as understandable as possible, so that people reading it know what their full impact is going to be on them. And the municipal complex has waited 10 years. I think as important as this document is, it can wait, say, 1 more week if we need to make sure we get it right out the door. And I say 1 week because I'm not opposed to the idea of us having a special call if we need to, so that we can have time to get this fixed, but still reduce the amount of time that we're allowing to lapse between now and the election.
I'll move to table the document.
Motion has been made to table the consideration of the municipal facilities master plan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. All right, this measure's been tabled. The next matter on the agenda is moving forward with the phase 1 of the master plan. I'll tell you what, without objection, I'm going to rule that one dilatory at this point, because it's been rendered moot by the master plan.
Angie as well.
All of it moved.
Okay, there were 3 motions that passed in executive session, and the city clerk has them, so for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to have her read those motions to you.
We had a motion to make Pratt Montgomery an offer for the pump station and land, $505 for the land and $79,080 for the pump station, contingent upon the clarification of ownership of the pump station.
Of ownership of the sewage system.
Of the sewage system. Okay. The other motion was a motion to authorize the city attorney to send a demand letter to David McReynolds, CMC Investment, and Joe Cuvier, demanding the completion of streets in East Point subdivision by December 1st, 2011. And a motion authorizing the city engineer to investigate available services to map the piping system on 182 and report back to the board at the next meeting.
All right, that will carry us to a request to approve, no, wait. A presentation and request for consideration and approval of a revision to the organizational structure, including job description modifications for the electric department. Mr. Kemp?
Mayor, Board of Alderman, I guess the recommendation is today, since our last meeting in July, when we proposed a different organizational structure and presented and approved, we've had some other changes in the organization. Change in Grantham resigned, gave his resignation effective on August 26th with a September 6th depart date. And then Diane Quinn announced her plans for retirement early this month, which would be effective the end of the month. As we have done with other changes in the organizations from the day when we started, I guess leading up to the last organizational change, we took an opportunity to kind of step back and look at our current processes and how we might do things more efficiently.
improve communications, try to improve customer service, and at the same time, save some money from an overall department standpoint. We've been working on that, I guess, internally, kind of looking at processes during this interim stage. And tonight, the recommendation that I brought forth was to try to come with a plan that would further merge the services that are currently in the office side, which are in our last organizational chart we look at, would be with Katie and Shane into basically one group. The same amount of personnel would fit into those groups. Would it be just merging those as well? The other two things that are identified in this proposal go into the organization. Would recognize that Tommy Stinson, who was approved, I think at the last time, was a lead service technician and energy advisor, to move him into a supervisory responsibility with the two service technicians reporting to him. Here again, taking on more responsibility as relates to the water and the electricity, but also freeing him up to do more work in the energy services type work that we had talked about in the previous discussion. As relates to the deposit clerk, here again, looking at that, we have broadened or asked for broadening those capabilities when Diane did to actually take a bigger role in, although all the new accounts, their service from top to bottom, which would include the deposit refunds, and that was what the request for that position would be, and it'd be reclassified or renamed as a. I was trying to look right here.
Account services?
Do what?
Account services clerk?
Yeah, account services clerk. One of the things that we're working on real closely with SEDC, which is our billing agency, is to do a little bit more thorough way of handling with new customers and transfers on the front end, make sure that system's in place, and then I think it helps us all the way down the line. So anyway, that's the recommendation that I'm bringing forth today for your consideration and approval. And I don't know of anything else unless there's specific questions.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Sistrunk.
I move approval of revision to the organizational structure and proposed job descriptions for the electric department as presented by Mr. Kemp.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to approve of a revision to the organizational structure, including job description modifications for the electric department as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits? Discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion?
So does it change, from Shane's position, where Katie and Shane were side by side, the new office manager, Katie, will then be under the new office manager of office services?
As the accountant, right now, we went back to show where it was right now. We're in the process of rewriting that job description we talked about last time.
Yeah.
But that has not been approved, so I left her showing as the accountant position currently, and that position would fit under this new
And the
title.
manager of office services, is that gonna be a higher?
It'd be at the same grade level that Shane left at.
That
He was at a grade 15, and so we left it at grade 15.
Alderman Vaughn?
No question.
Any further discussion?
Mr.
Any
Mayor.
further? Alderman Perkins?
Yeah, Mr. Kemp, very briefly, I could keep you here the rest of the night, but I'll ask you just one question. Why do you have an accountant, a professional person, reporting to a manager of office services? And in answering that question, have you already made a determination who you're going to want to hire there? Do you plan to hire the accountant to that position?
You know, I think what the intent and part of the recommendation was to put this out for bids
I understand.
on that. And so there's been no determination on that. I think if you looked at the job description of that manager, and I think clearly that manager would be have accounting and business standpoint, I mean, I think that would be a qualification. I'm not sure if I understand it. So I don't see a conflict with an accountant reporting to that position.
So even if the person does not have an accounting degree, because your job description does not require them to have an accounting degree, I don't think, but if let's assume they have a degree in business administration, and so you want the person with the business administration to supervise an accountant. Is that what you're asking us?
They could, yes, sir.
Okay, you answered the question, yes, you actually, okay, got it.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is request for approval to add job duties to the position held by Tommy Stetson.
That's correct. And part of this, we talked, I mean, as I mentioned earlier in this discussion, Tommy has done a great job. He is the lead meter person, and to allow him to focus on the dual role in both, and let's see. Well, I had all of them lined up a minute ago. Yep, here it is right here. Account services, which deals with the processing and dealing with rereads as relates to water and electric, making sure the new accounts are set up correctly. That would be what his basic current duties are. We've expanded that, as we identified in the July board meeting, to add energy advisor to that, to be more proactive in dealing with customers on how they can save energy and use it more efficiently, and also answer high bill complaints, having more in the office to do that. What we're asking now with this new structure would be to give him supervisory responsibility for the 2 service technicians that we currently have. Here again, I think it creates an opportunity for them to work very closely on the new accounts, but also to, and if you look in their job description, part of their job would be to actually deal with high bill complaints, rates, and whatever on that as well. So my recommendation would be give him the supervisory responsibility. Tommy is currently at the grade 10, and with the supervisory, I'd request that he be considered and promoted to the grade 11 with the supervisory responsibility.
Discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Vaughn.
I make the recommendation to approve to add job duty for the position held by Tommy Stetson involving supervisor and energy advisor, which will result in a promotion in the position of lead service technician and energy advisor. The job would be in salary of grade 11. The job will result in a 10% promotion increase, making this new job rate $39,412.20, $18.95 an hour. 2,080 hours in grade 11, subject to a 6-week probation period.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to approve of adding job duties to the position held by Tommy Stetson involving supervision and energy advisor, which will result in a promotion to the position of lead service technician and energy advisor. This job will be in salary grade 11. This will result in a 10% promotional increase, making his new rate $39,412.20, $18.95 per hour, 2,080 hours in grade 11, subject to a 6-month probationary period. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrock. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. All right. By a vote of 6 in favor with 0 against, this measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is request for approval of the proposed job description for manager of office services. Alderman Sistrock.
I move approval of the proposed job description for the position of manager of office services in the electric department in salary grade 15, and approval to advertise to fill this position.
Alderman Sistrock has made a motion to approve of the proposed job description for manager of of office services in the electric department at salary grade 15, and authorization to advertise to fill this position as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Sistrunk, you wish to speak on the merits. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Just one question. This will be listed externally?
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Raise them high. All those opposed, please respond by raising your hand. All right, by a vote of 5 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the proposed job description for account services clerk in the electric department, and authorization to advertise to fill the position. Discussion? Alderman Parker has made a motion to approve of the proposed job description for account services clerk in the electric department, and authorization to advertise to fill this position as presented. Alderman Parker, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to make sure, this is a grade 7, Mr. Boyd, step 1. Okay, yeah, no problem, go ahead.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 6 in favor with 0 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a request to approve the placement of positions of linemen in the placement of positions of linemen in the electric department at salary grade 14.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve the placement of positions of linemen in the electric department at salary grade 14. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Parker.
The only concern I have is I don't think we should raise grades because somebody's about to tap it out, just because they've been at a certain level. If they've been in a position for 10 years, I don't think we should raise the level just because they're fixing to not be able to get another raise. I mean, if they haven't progressed through the organization, anyway, I don't know that I'm in favor of raising the grade just because of that reason. Now, I understand I understand everything else in here, and I agree with everything else, that we have 3 different grades and we need to get one and stick with it. I understand that.
And that is the basis of the recommendation, not because somebody is in a grade and about to top out. That was not a factor. It's simply trying to get something uniform. There are other items that follow this one that deal with the lineman position, so the classification of the job is relevant to those decisions, so.
And what does in that case happen if say if it remained at 13, would say one of those individuals not get the full pay increase that we had, the full 3%?
That would be a decision that the board would have to determine. At this point in time, there was no decision made by the board to withhold pay because a person was at the top or exceeded the top of their classification.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a request for authorization to promote Brad Scarborough from apprentice lineman to lineman in the electric department. Discussion.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to authorize the promotion of Brad Scarborough from apprentice lineman to lineman in the electric department as presented. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, thanks.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 6 in favor and 0 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for advertisement to fill a vacant position of lineman in the electric department. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to authorize the advertisement of filling a vacant position of lineman in the electric department as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hands. By a vote of 6 in favor with 0 against, this measure passes.
Mayor, I move that we stand adjourned until November 1st, 2011, 5:30 at City Hall.
Now, Alderman Corey has made a motion to adjourn until November 1st, 2011 at 5:30 in City Hall courtroom. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes. We stand in adjournment. It's been a while since we've done one of those.